The building was empty. Every floor, every hallway, every stairwell cleared. Protocol had worked perfectly, except for one catastrophic oversight. Evelyn Cross, CEO of Vision Tech Industries, lay crumpled on the cold concrete floor of the 23rd level, her ankle twisted at an unnatural angle, her phone just beyond reach. The safety locks had engaged. The silence pressed against her ears like water. And for the first time in 30 years, the woman who controlled everything couldn't control the one thing that mattered, whether anyone would notice she was gone. If you want to know what happens when the person who never needs saving discovers she's been left behind, stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fire alarm was screaming. Evelyn Cross didn't flinch at the sound. She'd heard it 6 times in the past 18 months. Fire drills at Vision Tech Industries were clockwork events, scheduled quarterly and executed with the kind of military precision that made her proud. Everything in her company ran like that. Efficient, controlled, predictable. It was how she'd built a $40 million tech empire from a single patent and a ruthless work ethic that had cost her 3 relationships and most of her 20s. She glanced at her watch, 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, and saved the financial projections she'd been reviewing. Around her, the executive floor erupted into the familiar choreography of evacuation. Assistants grabbed purses. Managers ushered their teams toward the stairwells. Security personnel appeared at intervals, shepherding employees with practiced calm. "Miss Cross, we need to move." Jeremy Chen, her head of operations, appeared in her doorway, tablet already in hand, tracking evacuation metrics in real time. "Go ahead," Evelyn said, not looking up from her screen. "I need 2 minutes to upload these files to the cloud." "The protocol is immediate evacuation." "The protocol is my protocol, Jeremy. I wrote it. 2 minutes." He hesitated. They always hesitated with her, then nodded and disappeared. Evelyn returned to her screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. The quarterly board presentation was in 3 days, and these numbers needed to be perfect. Everything she did needed to be perfect. Perfection was the armor she'd worn since childhood, the shield that had protected her from every doubt, every whisper that maybe she didn't belong in rooms full of Harvard MBAs when she'd barely scraped through community college with undiagnosed dyslexia, and a mother who thought reading difficulties meant stupidity. The alarm continued its shrill cadence. Evelyn tuned it out with practiced ease, the same way she tuned out doubt, discomfort, and the persistent loneliness that occasionally surfaced during the rare, quiet moments she allowed herself. Upload complete. She grabbed her phone and her jacket, slipping into the Armani blazer that had cost more than her first car. The executive floor was empty now, silent except for the alarm. She moved toward the main stairwell, her heels clicking against the polished marble, and stopped. The quarterly projections. The hard copies she'd marked up with notes. They were still on her desk, and she needed them for tonight's review session. The digital files were backed up, but her handwritten analysis, the pattern recognition that had made her a legend in venture capital circles, that was irreplaceable. Evelyn turned back. It would take 30 seconds, in and out. She pushed through her office door, grabbed the folder from her desk, and turned to leave, just as a mechanical grinding sound echoed through the building. The safety locks. Stage 2 of the evacuation protocol engaged the electromagnetic security system that sealed the building into zones, preventing the spread of fire or smoke, and trapping anyone still inside their designated section. Evelyn's breath caught. She lunged for the stairwell door and yanked the handle. Locked. She spun toward the elevator bank. Red lights glowed above every door. Emergency shutdown. She pulled out her phone to call security and override the system. No signal. The building's emergency protocol included cellular jamming to prevent network overload during evacuations. "Okay," she said aloud, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to spike through her system. "Okay. Think." There was an emergency phone in the main conference room. Landline. Direct connection to building security. She moved quickly down the hallway, her heels sharp against the silence, turned the corner, and didn't see the electrical cord. Someone had been installing new presentation equipment in conference room B. They'd left the power cable stretched across the hallway, black against black carpet, invisible in the dimmed emergency lighting. Evelyn's foot caught the cord. Physics took over. Her body pitched forward, arms windmilling uselessly, and she went down hard. Her left ankle twisted as she fell, and she heard the snap before she felt it, a sound like a dry branch breaking, clear and terrible. Then came the pain. It shot up her leg in a white-hot wave that stole her breath and brought tears she refused to shed. She rolled onto her back, gasping, and tried to assess the damage with the clinical detachment she brought to every crisis. Her ankle was already swelling, the joint bent wrong, and when she tried to put weight on it, the pain intensified to the point where her vision went gray at the edges. Broken. Definitely broken. Her phone had skidded several feet away when she fell. She could see it, the screen glowing with her lock screen photo. Herself at the ribbon cutting for the Vision Tech campus, surrounded by people she employed but didn't know. Evelyn started to crawl toward it. Each movement sent fresh agony through her ankle, but she'd built an empire on pushing through discomfort. She'd given investor presentations with food poisoning. She'd negotiated contracts with migraines that would have felled lesser executives. She could crawl 6 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet. Her hands stretched toward the phone, fingers extended. The fire alarm shut off. The sudden silence was absolute, pressing against her eardrums like physical weight. In that silence, Evelyn became aware of something she'd been too focused to notice before. She was completely alone. 23 floors up in a sealed building, injured, unable to reach her phone, and no one knew she was here. They thought she'd evacuated. She'd dismissed Jeremy, had sent him ahead, had insisted she didn't need supervision. And now the building was empty except for her, and protocol dictated that no one could re-enter until the fire department cleared the structure. How long would that take? An hour? 2 hours? Her ankle throbbed with each heartbeat, a metronome of pain she couldn't escape. "Help!" she called out, and her voice sounded small in the vast empty space. "Help!" Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Just the hum of the HVAC system, still running, still recycling the same air through the same empty hallways. Evelyn tried again to reach her phone, stretching until her shoulder screamed in protest, but it remained inches beyond her grasp. She collapsed back against the carpet, breathing hard, and for the first time in 30 years felt the edges of real fear begin to seep in. She was 8 years old again, locked in the school basement during a fire drill because she'd been in the bathroom and hadn't heard the alarm. She'd hammered on the door until her hands were bruised, screaming until her voice gave out, and no one had heard. No one had noticed. It had been 20 minutes before a janitor found her, curled in the corner, convinced she'd been forgotten forever. Her mother's response when she'd gotten home: "Well, you should have been paying attention like everyone else." Evelyn closed her eyes against the memory, forcing her breathing to steady. She was not 8 years old. She was not helpless. She was Evelyn Cross, and she solved problems. The emergency phone. If she couldn't reach her cell, she'd get to the landline. Conference room C was 15 feet away. She could crawl 15 feet. It took her 10 minutes. Every movement was agony, dragging her injured leg behind her, using her arms to pull herself forward across the carpet. Sweat soaked through her silk blouse. Her perfectly styled hair fell across her face in damp strands. The facade of control, the image she maintained so carefully, stripped away inch by painful inch. But she made it. Evelyn pulled herself up using the conference table, standing on her good leg, and lunged for the emergency phone mounted on the wall. Her fingers closed around the receiver. She lifted it to her ear. Dead silence. She pressed the hook switch. Nothing. The maintenance logs, she'd reviewed them last month, had noted that the landlines in the conference rooms were scheduled for upgrade. They must have been disconnected already. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against the wall. Evelyn slid down to the floor, her back against the wall, her broken ankle stretched out in front of her. The pain had evolved from sharp agony to a deep, relentless throb. She should elevate it. She should ice it. She should be in an emergency room. Instead, she was alone in an empty building, and no one was coming. The thought she'd been holding at bay finally broke through. What if they don't realize I'm missing? She had no family. Her parents had died years ago, her father from a heart attack, her mother from bitterness and cigarettes. No siblings. Her romantic relationships never lasted because she chose work over intimacy every time. Her friends were business acquaintances, people she had dinner with at industry conferences, people who knew Evelyn Cross, the CEO, but had no idea who existed underneath. If she died here, how long would it take anyone to notice? The thought terrified her more than the broken ankle, more than being trapped. She'd spent 30 years building walls so high and strong that she'd become unreachable, and now those walls were a prison. Evelyn leaned her head back against the wall, staring at the ceiling tiles she'd selected personally when the building was renovated. Everything in VisionTech bore her mark, her decisions, her vision. It was the monument she'd built to prove she was worth something. But monuments were cold and empty, and right now, so was she. 23 floors below, Daniel Moore stood in the parking lot conducting the post-evacuation head count for the maintenance department. "Marcus," he called out. "Here!" "Patricia?" "Present." "Jimmy?" "Yo!" Daniel checked off names on his clipboard, the same routine he'd performed a dozen times before. The autumn sun was warm on his shoulders, a perfect Boston afternoon, the kind of day where the city felt almost gentle despite its usual edge. He was a tall man, 42, with the kind of build that came from years of physical work rather than gym memberships. His hands were calloused, his work uniform neat but worn, and his face had the quiet, settled quality of someone who'd learned to carry grief without letting it define him. "That's everyone," Daniel said, making the final check mark. He glanced toward the building, its glass and steel facade reflecting the cloudless sky, and frowned. Something felt wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it, just an instinct, the same one that told him when a motor was about to fail or when his daughter, Lily, was getting sick before she showed symptoms. "You good, boss?" Marcus, his second-in-command, appeared at his elbow. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're about to find a problem nobody else noticed." Daniel smiled despite himself. Marcus had worked with him for 5 years, long enough to read his moods. "Just being thorough. You head back with the team. I'm going to do a final check with the evacuation coordinators. Protocol says we stay in the lot until fire department clearance." "I know what protocol says. I helped write it." Marcus raised his hands in surrender and walked back toward the cluster of maintenance workers comparing evacuation times like it was a sporting event. Daniel approached the main evacuation staging area, where Jeremy Chen stood with a tablet, coordinating with building security. The head of operations looked stressed, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Status?" Daniel asked. Jeremy glanced up. "Clean sweep. Everyone accounted for, and we beat our target time by 90 seconds. Fire department is doing their walkthrough now, but it looks like another drill completed perfectly." "Everyone accounted for?" "Every department reported full evacuation. Ms. Cross was the last one out of the executive suite, but she cleared before the safety locks engaged." Daniel nodded, but the unease didn't fade. "You saw her exit the building?" "I saw her heading for the stairwell. Why?" "Just checking." But Daniel wasn't just checking. He was listening to an instinct that had kept him alive through 2 tours in Afghanistan and 15 years of single parenthood. Something was off. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Sharon Mueller, head of building security. The call connected after 2 rings. "Sharon, it's Daniel Moore. Do you have visual confirmation that Ms. Cross exited the building?" There was a pause, then the sound of keyboard typing. "Let me check the exterior cameras. Hold on." Daniel waited, watching the fire trucks positioned at the building entrance, the firefighters beginning their systematic floor-by-floor clearance. Standard procedure. Everything by the book. "Daniel?" Sharon's voice had changed, tension creeping in. "I don't see her on any of the exit footage. Could be she left through a side entrance, though. Let me check those feeds." "How long?" 2 minutes. Daniel ended the call and looked up at the building. 23 floors of glass and steel, home to 600 employees, and somewhere in there, maybe, possibly, was a woman who never accepted help, never showed weakness, never admitted she might need anyone. He'd worked at VisionTech for 3 years, maintaining the systems that kept the building running. And in that time, he'd seen Evelyn Cross exactly 12 times. She was a force of nature, cold, brilliant, utterly self-contained. She spoke to him twice, once to compliment the efficiency of his department, once to criticize a delayed repair. Both interactions had been brief, professional, and completely devoid of warmth. She wasn't the kind of person who inspired affection. But Daniel had learned in Afghanistan that you didn't leave people behind, no matter how difficult they were. His phone rang. Sharon. Daniel, she's not on any of the exit footage. I've checked every camera, every entrance. If she left this building, she didn't do it through any monitored exit. Which means she didn't leave. Which means... Sharon stopped, and Daniel could hear the realization hitting her. Oh God, the safety locks. How long until fire department clearance? They're only on floor 6. At this rate, another 45 minutes minimum. 45 minutes. If Evelyn Cross was injured, if she was trapped, 45 minutes could mean the difference between a treatable injury and permanent damage. Daniel looked at the building again, at the sealed doors, the emergency protocols he'd helped design, the systems meant to save lives that might now be endangering one. I'm going in, he said. Daniel, that's against protocol. You could lose your job. You could be arrested for breaching emergency security. Note my objection in the log, Daniel said, and ended the call. He walked toward the service entrance on the east side of the building, the one he'd used 1,000 times, the one with the manual override he'd installed himself 3 months ago. Emergency protocols were good, but they needed fail-safes, back doors for situations exactly like this. Marcus spotted him. Boss, where you going? Equipment check, Daniel called back, not breaking stride. Be right back. The service entrance was locked, as expected. Daniel pulled out his maintenance keyring and selected a small silver key marked with red tape. The override key, meant for catastrophic system failures. He'd had it approved by security and filed with the safety committee. He'd never actually used it. The key turned smoothly. The magnetic lock disengaged with a soft click. Daniel pulled the door open and stepped into the stairwell, into the empty building, into a decision that might cost him everything. But as he climbed the first flight of stairs, taking them 2 at a time, he thought about his daughter Lily, waiting for him at home with Mrs. Patterson, the retired teacher who watched her after school. He thought about the conversation they'd had last week when she'd asked him what made someone a hero. Heroes are people who do the right thing even when it's hard, he'd told her, even when it costs them something. Like you? She'd asked, with the absolute faith only an 8-year-old could have. I try, sweetheart. I try. Daniel reached the landing for the second floor and kept climbing. 21 more floors to go. His legs burned, his breath came harder, but he maintained a steady pace. He'd run worse distances in worse conditions, carrying 70 pounds of gear through desert heat. This was just stairs. Floor 5, floor 8, floor 12. The building was eerily silent around him, just the echo of his footsteps and the hum of the HVAC system. Emergency lighting cast everything in pale amber, giving the stairwell a dreamlike quality, like moving through a memory rather than a physical space. Floor 16, floor 19. Daniel's phone buzzed. He ignored it. Sharon, probably, or Jeremy, or building management realizing someone had breached the evacuation perimeter. He'd deal with the consequences later. Right now, he had to trust his instinct, the one that said someone needed help, and he was the only one who could provide it. Floor 22. One more. He pushed through the door to the 23rd floor and stopped, listening. The executive level was designed with sound-dampening materials, all thick carpet and acoustic panels, meant to create an environment of calm productivity. Now it just made it harder to locate anyone who might be here. Ms. Cross? Daniel called out, his voice swallowed by the silence. Evelyn Cross, if you can hear me, make noise. Nothing. He moved down the main hallway, checking offices, conference rooms, the executive lounge. Every space was empty, perfectly maintained, impersonal. He reached the corner office, Evelyn's domain, and found it vacant, her computer screen dark, her desk unnaturally neat. Maybe Sharon was wrong. Maybe the cameras had missed her. Maybe she'd left through some exit they hadn't checked, and he'd just violated every protocol for nothing. Daniel turned to leave and heard it. A small sound, barely audible, the scrape of fabric against carpet. He froze, listening with the intensity he'd learned in combat, when the difference between a footstep and the wind could mean life or death. There. Again. Coming from the conference room wing. Daniel moved toward the sound, his heartbeat accelerating. He rounded the corner into the hallway leading to conference rooms A through D and saw her. Evelyn Cross lay on the floor near conference room C, her back against the wall, her face pale and drawn with pain. Her left ankle was swollen to twice its normal size, the joint clearly damaged. Her usually immaculate appearance was destroyed. Hair disheveled, clothes rumpled, mascara smudged under her eyes. She looked up as he approached, and the expression that crossed her face was complex, layered. Shock, relief, humiliation, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "Mr. Moore," she said, and her voice was steady despite everything. "This is unexpected." Daniel knelt beside her, his training kicking in automatically. "Don't move. Let me check the injury." "It's broken." "I'm quite aware." "Broken how long?" "I don't know. 20 minutes, maybe 30. She gestured weakly toward her phone, still lying several feet away. "I couldn't reach it." Daniel retrieved the phone and handed it to her, then gently examined her ankle without touching it, assessing the damage. Definitely broken, possibly fractured in multiple places. The swelling suggested there might be ligament damage as well. "We need to get you out of here and to a hospital," he said. "Yes, I'd gathered that." A flash of her usual sharp tone, the armor snapping back into place. "How did you get in?" "The building is sealed." "Maintenance override. I had a feeling someone might still be inside." "A feeling?" She said it like it was a foreign concept. "You violated evacuation protocol on a feeling?" "You're welcome," Daniel said mildly. Evelyn had the grace to look chagrined. "I am grateful." "Thank you. That was brave." "It was logical. You were missing from the head count. No one else noticed." "I noticed." Something in her expression shifted, became vulnerable in a way that clearly terrified her. She looked away, focusing on her phone screen. "Well, your instincts were correct. Now what?" Daniel pulled out his radio. The maintenance frequency was independent of the building's emergency systems, and keyed the mic. "Sharon, this is Daniel. I've located Ms. Cross on 23. She's injured, needs immediate medical attention. Get the paramedics up here." Sharon's response was instant. "Copy that. Paramedics are en route. Fire department is clearing floors 10 through 15 now. You should have access in less than 10 minutes." "Understood." Daniel clipped the radio back to his belt and looked at Evelyn. "Help's coming. Try to stay still and keep that ankle elevated if possible." "I'm not entirely helpless, Mr. Moore. I have managed to survive 43 years with minimal assistance." 43? Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You don't look it." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" "It's supposed to be true. Most people under this much stress would be panicking. You're handling it remarkably well." Evelyn's laugh was bitter. "What you're seeing is excellent practice in compartmentalization. Inside, I assure you, I'm quite thoroughly panicking." It was the most honest thing he'd ever heard her say. Daniel sat down against the opposite wall, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough to help if she needed it. "How'd it happen?" "Electrical cord. I came back for files I'd left on my desk." She paused. "Stupid." "Not stupid. Human. In my experience, those are often the same thing." "That's a pretty cynical worldview." "It's a realistic one." Evelyn shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. "You have a daughter, don't you? I've seen her picture on your desk in the maintenance office." Daniel was surprised she'd noticed. "Lily, she's 8. And her mother?" "Died when Lily was 2, cancer." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." They sat in silence for a moment, and Daniel watched emotions play across Evelyn's face, pain, frustration, something that might have been loneliness. She looked smaller than she did in the boardroom, more human, breakable. "Do you know what the worst part is?" Evelyn said suddenly. "Not the pain, not being trapped. It's knowing that I've built a life where no one would notice I was gone, where being left behind is just expected." "I noticed," Daniel said quietly. "You noticed because you're good at your job. That's different." "Is it?" Evelyn looked at him, really looked, and in her eyes he saw the 8-year-old girl locked in a basement, convinced she'd been forgotten. He recognized it because he'd seen that same fear in Lily's eyes when she'd started a new school last year, afraid the other children would reject her because reading was hard and words sometimes swam on the page. Fear looked the same at 8 and 43. "Yes," Evelyn said finally, "it is." Footsteps echoed in the stairwell, the paramedics moving fast. Daniel stood and waved them toward the conference room hallway. 2 EMTs appeared, carrying their equipment, professional and efficient. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay very still while we assess the injury," the first paramedic said, kneeling beside Evelyn. Daniel stepped back, giving them room to work. He watched as they examined her ankle, took her vitals, fitted a temporary splint. Evelyn endured it all with gritted teeth and minimal complaint, maintaining control even while obviously in agony. "We need to get you to Mass General," the second paramedic said. "That ankle needs x-rays and likely surgery." "I have a meeting at 4, Evelyn said. "You have a date with an orthopedic surgeon," the paramedic corrected. "The meeting will have to wait." They transferred her to a stretcher with practiced care, though Evelyn's sharp intake of breath suggested it still hurt considerably. As they prepared to wheel her toward the elevator, now operational with fire department override, she caught Daniel's arm. "Mr. Moore, Daniel." She paused, clearly uncomfortable with whatever she was about to say. "Thank you for noticing. I won't forget it." "Feel better, Ms. Cross?" "Evelyn," she said, "if you're going to rescue someone, you should probably use their first name." Then they wheeled her away, and Daniel was alone in the empty hallway, wondering what exactly had just happened and why it felt like more than a simple emergency response. His radio crackled. "Daniel, this is Jeremy. We need you down here for the incident report." "On my way." Daniel took the stairs down slowly, his legs finally registering the 23-floor climb. His phone showed 6 missed calls and a dozen text messages, all from management, all wanting explanations. He'd probably lost his job. At minimum, he'd be suspended pending investigation for violating evacuation protocol. The override key he'd used was technically authorized, but entering a sealed building during an emergency drill could be grounds for termination. But as he pushed through the ground floor exit and stepped into the afternoon sunlight, seeing the paramedics loading Evelyn into an ambulance, seeing her alive and getting help because he'd trusted his instinct, Daniel couldn't bring himself to regret the decision. "Heroes are people who do the right thing even when it's hard," he'd told Lily. He just hoped he still had a job to go back to when he explained that to his daughter tonight. The meeting Daniel had expected never came. Instead, when he arrived at the maintenance office the next morning, he found a handwritten note slipped under his door. The handwriting was precise, controlled, feminine. "Mr. Moore, thank you for yesterday. I've spoken with HR and building management. No disciplinary action will be taken. Your instincts were correct, and I'm grateful." "EC," Marcus looked up from the workbench where he was sorting replacement filters. "That from who I think it's from. Apparently Miss Cross doesn't want me fired for saving her life." "Well, that's big of her," Marcus grinned. "You're a legend, man. Everyone's talking about how you went full action hero and breached the building. Security's calling it the Moore override incident. They're already updating the protocols." Daniel folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. "It wasn't heroic. It was common sense. Tell that to Ms. Cross. Word is she spent 4 hours in surgery yesterday. Broke the ankle in 3 places, tore 2 ligaments. She's going to be off her feet for weeks." The thought of Evelyn Cross, perpetual motion incarnate, confined to bed rest seemed almost impossible. Daniel pulled up the day's work orders on his tablet and tried to focus on the routine tasks that made up his world. HVAC maintenance on floors 12 and 15, a lighting issue in conference room B, elevator inspection due by Friday. Normal, predictable, safe. But throughout the day, he found his thoughts drifting back to that empty hallway, to the vulnerability in Evelyn's eyes when she'd admitted that no one would notice she was gone. He recognized that loneliness because he'd lived it himself in the 2 years after Sarah died, when grief had turned his world into a narrow tunnel of survival and single parenthood. It was Lily who'd saved him, really. Her needs had given him structure when everything else felt meaningless. Her laughter had reminded him that joy still existed. Her absolute faith in him had forced him to become worthy of it. Who saves someone like Evelyn Cross, who'd built her entire identity around not needing anyone? At 3:30, Daniel's shift ended. He clocked out, grabbed his jacket, and headed to Lily's school for pickup. The autumn air had turned crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. Boston in October was his favorite time of year, the city softening around the edges, the aggressive summer heat giving way to something gentler. Lily's elementary school was a brick building 3 blocks from their apartment, close enough that she could walk with friends when she was older, far enough that Daniel still drove on rainy days. He parked in the pickup line and waited, watching the stream of children pouring from the main entrance. She appeared in a cluster of girls, her backpack nearly as big as she was, her dark hair escaping from the ponytail he'd carefully constructed that morning. When she spotted his truck, her face lit up with uncomplicated joy, and Daniel felt the familiar warmth that came from being someone's entire world. "Daddy!" She climbed into the passenger seat, struggling with the seatbelt until he reached over to help. "Guess what happened today?" "What happened?" "Mrs. Patterson said I'm getting better at reading. She said the letter sounds are staying still for me now instead of jumping around." Daniel's throat tightened. Lily's dyslexia had been diagnosed 6 months ago, after a year of watching her struggle with homework that should have been simple. The testing had been expensive. His insurance barely covered it, but seeing her confidence grow as she worked with a specialist had been worth every dollar. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." "Can we celebrate with ice cream?" "It's October. You'll freeze." "Ice cream tastes good in all seasons, Daddy. That's science." Daniel laughed and drove to their neighborhood ice cream shop, a family-owned place that stayed open year-round despite questionable economics. Lily ordered her usual, chocolate chip cookie dough, and Daniel got coffee flavor, and they sat at a small table by the window. "Did you have a good day at work?" Lily asked between bites. "Interesting day. Yesterday, actually, I helped someone who was hurt." "Like a superhero?" "Like a person doing his job." Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to important matters. "Mrs. Patterson says helping people is the most important job, more important than being a doctor or a scientist or even the president." "Mrs. Patterson is a wise woman. She's really old, though, like maybe 50. Daniel hid his smile. Mrs. Patterson was 38. "Ancient." They finished their ice cream and drove home to their apartment, a modest 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a well-maintained building. The rent was manageable, the neighborhood was safe, and the landlord didn't mind that Daniel sometimes worked on home repair projects in exchange for reduced rent. It wasn't glamorous. The furniture was secondhand, the kitchen was barely functional, and Lily's bedroom was so small that her bed took up most of the floor space. But it was theirs, and it was filled with things that mattered. Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator, photos of Sarah smiling from every surface, books stacked on shelves Daniel had built himself. "Homework time," he said as Lily dumped her backpack on the couch. "Can I do it after dinner?" "Nice try. 20 minutes now, then you can help me cook." She groaned dramatically, but pulled out her reading workbook. Daniel sat beside her at the kitchen table, watching as she carefully sounded out words, her finger tracking beneath each line. "The letter sounds are staying still for me now." He'd never fully understood how hard reading was for her, until the specialist had explained that dyslexia made letters move and flip, turning simple text into a constantly shifting puzzle. And yet Lily kept trying, kept working, kept believing that she could do it. Her determination reminded him of Sarah, who'd fought cancer with the same stubborn optimism until the very end. "Daddy?" Lily looked up from her workbook. "Do you ever get scared?" "Sometimes. Why?" "Tommy Franklin said only babies get scared. He said his dad never gets scared of anything." Daniel set down the carrots he'd been chopping for dinner. "Tommy Franklin's dad is either lying or he's never faced anything truly frightening. Being scared is normal, Lily. It's what you do with the fear that matters." "What do you mean?" "I mean that brave people feel scared too. They just don't let the fear stop them from doing what needs to be done." She thought about this. "Were you scared when you helped that person yesterday?" He hadn't been, actually. He'd been focused, determined, operating on instinct and training. But he'd been terrified afterward when he'd realized what could have gone wrong, what the consequences might have been. "A little," he admitted, "but someone needed help, and I was the only one who could give it." "Then you were brave." "Thank you, sweetheart." They cooked dinner together, pasta with marinara sauce, garlic bread, a salad that Lily picked at reluctantly. After dishes, they watched a nature documentary about ocean creatures. Lily curled against his side on the couch, her weight warm and solid and infinitely precious. At 8:30, he tucked her into bed, read her a chapter from her current favorite book, a fantasy about a girl who could talk to animals, and kissed her forehead. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Lilypad. Don't call me that. I'm not a baby. You'll always be my baby. She smiled despite herself and closed her eyes. Daniel watched her for a moment. This small person who'd reorganized his entire existence, who'd taught him that love didn't divide when you gave it away but multiplied. Then he went to his own bedroom, the room he'd shared with Sarah, the room that still held traces of her in the closet, in the jewelry box on the dresser, in the photograph on his nightstand. 6 years gone, and some days it felt like yesterday. Other days, like a lifetime ago. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Evelyn Cross lying on a hospital bed somewhere, probably fighting with her doctors about when she could return to work. Thinking about the fear he'd seen in her eyes, the admission that she'd built a life where being left behind was expected. Daniel knew something about building walls. He'd constructed his own after Sarah died. Not walls of ambition and success like Evelyn's, but walls of routine and responsibility. He'd made himself small, contained, manageable. He'd stopped taking risks, stopped imagining futures beyond the next day, the next week, the next parent-teacher conference. It was safe. It was stable. It was slowly suffocating him. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. This is Evelyn Cross. Jeremy Chen provided your contact information. I hope that's acceptable. Daniel sat up, suddenly very awake. Of course. How are you feeling? The response came quickly. Like I was hit by a truck. 3 surgical pins, 8 weeks non-weight bearing, physical therapy for months. My orthopedist is annoyingly cheerful about the whole thing. Recovery is a process. I don't do processes well. I do results. Daniel smiled despite himself. How are you managing? Badly. I've been home for 6 hours and I've already reorganized my entire home office, restructured my quarterly projections, and fired my physical therapist for suggesting I embrace the journey of healing. I may not survive 8 weeks of this. You survived being trapped in an empty building with a broken ankle. You'll survive recovery. There was a longer pause this time. Thank you. Again. I've been trying to find adequate words, but everything sounds insufficient. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. You took a significant risk on my behalf that deserves more than a note and a text message. The note was enough. It wasn't. I'd like to thank you properly. Would you be willing to have coffee? Once I'm mobile enough to leave my apartment without requiring a crane. Daniel stared at the message. Coffee with Evelyn Cross. His boss's boss's boss, the woman who inhabited a world so far removed from his own, they might as well live on different planets. But he remembered her sitting against that wall, admitting her loneliness like it was a shameful secret. He remembered the vulnerability beneath the armor, the person underneath the CEO. Sure. Let me know when you're ready. Thank you. I'll be in touch. Daniel set his phone down and lay back against his pillows. Outside, Boston hummed with nighttime sounds. Traffic, sirens, the distant rumble of the subway. Normal city sounds that had become the soundtrack to his carefully constructed life. He had a feeling that life was about to get more complicated. 3 weeks later, Daniel's phone buzzed during his lunch break. I'm being released from house arrest. Coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m. There's a cafe near Vision Tech called Grounded. I'll be the one in the medical boot looking annoyed. Daniel checked his schedule. He could take an extended lunch, make it work. See you there. The next afternoon, he arrived at Grounded 10 minutes early. The cafe was one of those aggressively hipster places that served coffee in ceramic mugs and refused to offer flavored syrups on principle. Reclaimed wood tables, Edison bulbs, a chalkboard menu written in pretentious cursive. Evelyn was already there, seated at a corner table, her left leg extended with the medical boot propped on an adjacent chair. She wore black slacks tailored to accommodate the boot, a cashmere sweater in deep gray, and an expression of fierce concentration as she typed on her laptop. She looked up as he approached, and something in her face softened. Daniel, thank you for coming. Of course. He sat across from her, noting the crutches leaning against the wall. How's the ankle? Healing according to schedule, which my doctors find thrilling and I find tedious. I'm told I'm a terrible patient. I'm shocked. She smiled, a real smile, not the practiced corporate expression he'd seen in business magazines. I deserve that. I've been informed by no fewer than 4 medical professionals that my attitude needs adjustment. What do they want you to adjust it to? Gratitude, apparently. Patience, acceptance of physical limitations. All concepts I find personally offensive. A server appeared, young and earnest, and they ordered coffee, black for both of them. When the server left, Evelyn closed her laptop and gave Daniel her full attention. I wanted to thank you properly, she said, and to apologize. For what? For not noticing you before. You've worked at Vision Tech for 3 years. In that time, I've spoken to you exactly twice, both brief interactions that treated you like a piece of the building's infrastructure rather than a person. She paused. That was wrong. Daniel hadn't expected this level of honesty. You run a company. You can't know everyone personally. I could try harder, should try harder. She looked down at her hands, and Daniel noticed they were shaking slightly. Being trapped in that building, realizing no one would notice I was gone, it clarified some things for me. I've built a very successful company and a very empty life. Those truths are not unrelated. Running Vision Tech is an incredible achievement. Is it? If the achievement costs you every human connection, every relationship that matters, is it still worth celebrating? Evelyn met his eyes. I'm 43 years old, Daniel. I have no family, no real friends, no one who'd visit me in the hospital beyond professional obligation. When I woke up from surgery, the only flowers in my room were from my board of directors. Even those felt like a reminder that my value is purely economic. The server brought their coffee. Daniel waited until she'd left before responding. I understand that feeling more than you might think. Your wife. Sarah. She died 6 years ago. For about 2 years after that, I went through the motions. Work, parenting, sleep, repeat. No friends, no social life, no existence beyond keeping Lily fed and safe. He took a sip of coffee. I thought I was protecting her by narrowing our world, making it manageable. It took me a while to realize I was suffocating both of us. What changed? Lily started school, made friends, invited them over for play dates, and suddenly I was talking to other parents. Not about anything profound, just schedules and snack preferences and whether 6 was too young for sleepovers. But those small connections added up. Reminded me that isolation isn't the same as safety. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. I've been isolated so long, I'm not sure I know how to be anything else. I built my entire identity around not needing people, around being untouchable, invulnerable. Turns out that's just another word for alone. It doesn't have to be permanent. Doesn't it? I'm not exactly warm and approachable. I've fired people for bringing me birthday cake. I once made an intern cry because she used the wrong font in a presentation. You're also capable of admitting when you're wrong, which is rarer than you'd think. And you're here, having coffee with me, which suggests you're willing to try. She looked surprised, as if the thought hadn't occurred to her. I suppose I am. They talked for over an hour. Evelyn asked about Lily, and Daniel found himself telling her about the dyslexia diagnosis, the specialist appointments, the small victories that meant everything. Evelyn listened with an intensity that suggested she was absorbing every word. What are her symptoms? She asked. Letters reversing, words appearing to move on the page, difficulty with phonetic spelling. The specialist says it's moderate dyslexia, very treatable with the right support. Something shifted in Evelyn's expression. How old is she? 8. Why? I was diagnosed at 26, Evelyn said quietly. After I'd already dropped out of college twice, convinced I was stupid. My mother certainly thought so. She used to say I was wasting her time with my laziness and excuses. Daniel felt something tight in his chest. That must have been devastating. It was clarifying. Understanding that my brain processed information differently didn't make the years of shame disappear, but it gave me a framework. I taught myself coping mechanisms, built systems to work around the challenges. It's part of why I'm so obsessed with control. I had to control everything about my environment to succeed. Is that why you came back for those files during the fire drill? Yes. I'd marked them up by hand, mapped out patterns I could see but couldn't easily articulate. Without my handwritten notes, I'd have to start over, and starting over meant risking failure. Failure meant proving my mother right. She laughed bitterly. Turns out nearly dying to avoid failure is its own kind of dysfunction. You didn't nearly die. You broke your ankle. Thanks to you. If you hadn't trusted your instinct, I'd have been there for hours. The injury could have been much worse. I could have gone into shock, developed complications. She met his eyes. You saved me, Daniel. Not just physically. You reminded me that being noticed matters. That someone caring whether you're missing is worth more than any quarterly projection. The gratitude in her voice was almost painful. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did. She paused. Tell me about Lily's treatment. What kind of support is she getting? They spent another 30 minutes discussing dyslexia therapy, educational approaches, the accommodations Lily was receiving at school. Evelyn asked detailed questions, took notes on her phone, and suggested several specialists Daniel hadn't heard of. There's a reading program at Boston Children's Hospital, she said. Cutting-edge research into learning disabilities. They have a waiting list, but I sit on their fundraising board. I could make some calls. I can't afford Boston Children's. They have scholarship programs, need-based assistance. Let me connect you with their coordinator. Daniel wanted to refuse. Accepting help felt like acknowledging he couldn't provide everything Lily needed himself. But he thought about his daughter struggling with homework, fighting to make letters stay still, and pride seemed less important than her well-being. Thank you, he said. That would be helpful. Evelyn smiled, and it transformed her face, softening the sharp edges. It's selfish, really. I wish someone had done it for me. This is my chance to make that happen for someone else. They finished their coffee and stood to leave. Evelyn managed her crutches with obvious frustration, her movements careful but irritated. Can I help? Daniel offered. I need to do this myself. Doctor's orders. Apparently struggling builds character. She adjusted the crutches, balancing awkwardly. Though I suspect my character was already excessively built. I think you're doing fine. You're kind to lie. I'm not lying. You're learning to accept help. That takes more courage than most people realize. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. You're different than I expected. What did you expect? Someone bitter about class differences, resentful of people like me. Someone who'd hold my vulnerability against me. She paused. Instead, you're just genuinely decent, which is somehow more unsettling. Daniel laughed. I'll try to be more predictably resentful next time. Please don't. She shifted her weight, wincing slightly. Would you be willing to meet again? I don't have many people I can talk to honestly, and I find I enjoy your company. No pressure, but if you'd be open to occasional coffee, I'd appreciate it. It was such a tentative request, so unlike the commanding CEO, that Daniel found himself agreeing before he'd fully thought it through. Sure, I'd like that. Thank you. Evelyn smiled again, then carefully made her way toward the door, navigating around tables with determined concentration. Daniel watched her go. This complicated woman who'd built an empire to prove she wasn't stupid, who'd nearly died rather than appear imperfect, who was now learning to accept help one awkward coffee at a time. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Patterson. Lily had a great day at school. Reading assessment showed significant improvement. She's very proud of herself. Daniel typed back a quick thank you, then pocketed his phone and headed back to work. But throughout the afternoon, as he repaired a faulty thermostat and replaced aging circuit breakers, his mind kept returning to that conversation, to Evelyn's admission that she wished someone had helped her. Maybe that's what connection was, really. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but small acts of noticing, of caring, of showing up when someone needed you to. He'd noticed Evelyn was missing. She'd noticed his daughter needed support. It was a start. Over the next month, coffee became a regular occurrence. Every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, Daniel would meet Evelyn at Grounded, and they'd talk for an hour about everything and nothing. She told him about the challenges of running a tech company while recovering from surgery, about the physical therapy that left her exhausted and frustrated, about the board members who kept suggesting she take extended medical leave as if she were fragile. He told her about Lily's progress with the reading specialist at Boston Children's, a connection Evelyn had made happen with a single phone call, about the small triumphs that came from watching his daughter's confidence grow. about the loneliness that still surfaced sometimes in the quiet hours after Lily was asleep. They were an unlikely pair, the CEO and the maintenance supervisor, but somehow it worked. Evelyn's sharp intelligence found outlet in their conversations, freed from the performance of corporate leadership. Daniel's steady calm provided an anchor she hadn't realized she needed. What surprised Daniel most was how much he looked forward to those Tuesdays, how the rhythm of his week began to orient around that single hour of genuine connection. Lily's reading at grade level now, he told Evelyn on a cold November afternoon, 6 weeks after their first coffee. The specialist says she might even test above grade level by spring. The difference is remarkable. Evelyn's smile was radiant. That's wonderful. She must be so proud. She is. She wants to thank you herself, actually. She knows you helped arrange the program. You told her? I told her a friend made it possible. She's 8, but she's perceptive. She knows the program is expensive and that we couldn't afford it without help. Evelyn was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I'd like to meet her, if that would be appropriate. I know it might be strange given our professional relationship, but I'd genuinely like to meet the little girl who's doing so well. Daniel hesitated. Introducing Lily to Evelyn felt like crossing a line, merging the separate spheres of his life in ways that might complicate everything. But he also saw the vulnerability in Evelyn's request, the tentative hope that she might be allowed into something real, something that mattered beyond quarterly earnings. She'd like that, he said finally. Maybe we could do something casual, ice cream or the park. I'm still in this damn boot for 2 more weeks, so my park activities are limited. But ice cream sounds perfect. They arranged it for the following Saturday. Daniel spent the intervening days both anticipating and dreading the meeting, uncertain what would happen when his daughter met this woman who'd become unexpectedly important to him. Saturday arrived clear and cold, the kind of November day where the sky was impossibly blue and the air sharp enough to sting your lungs. Daniel and Lily arrived at the ice cream shop first, and Lily was vibrating with excitement. Is she really a CEO, Daddy? Like, the boss of everyone? She's the boss of a company, yes. Is she scary? Daniel thought about Evelyn making an intern cry over font choices, about the reputation she had for being demanding and unapproachable. Then he thought about the woman who'd admitted she was terrified of being left behind, who'd spent an hour discussing dyslexia treatments with genuine care. She can seem intimidating at first, he said carefully, but she's also very kind. She's the one who helped get you into the reading program. Then I like her already. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes later, managing her crutches with significantly more grace than she'd had a month ago. She wore jeans. Danielle had never seen her in anything but business attire, and a soft blue sweater that made her look younger, less armored. Lily's eyes went wide. You're pretty. Evelyn looked genuinely startled. Thank you. You must be Lily. That's me. Daddy says you helped me with reading. Thank you very much. The words came out in a rush, formal and rehearsed in the way children deliver prepared speeches. You're very welcome. I heard you're doing wonderfully. I am. I read a whole chapter book last week. It was about dragons. They ordered ice cream. Lily got her usual chocolate chip cookie dough. Evelyn ordered vanilla, and Daniel got coffee, and settled at a table by the window. Lily dominated the conversation with the unselfconscious enthusiasm of childhood, telling Evelyn about school, her friends, the science project she was working on about ocean ecosystems. Evelyn listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions, genuinely engaged. Daniel watched the interaction with something warm unfurling in his chest, seeing these 2 parts of his life connect in ways that felt natural despite the strangeness of the situation. Do you have kids? Lily asked suddenly. No, I don't. Do you want them? Lily, Daniel said gently, that's a personal question. It's okay. Evelyn met Lily's curious gaze. I never thought I did. I was always too focused on work, too busy building my company. But lately I've been wondering if maybe I was just scared. Scared of what? Scared I wouldn't be good at it. Scared I'd mess up. Being a parent seems like the most important job in the world, and I'm used to being good at things before I try them. Lily considered this with a seriousness beyond her years. Daddy says being scared is okay. It's what you do with the scared that matters. Your daddy is very wise. I know, he's the best daddy in the whole world. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Lily said things like this casually, not understanding the weight they carried, the way they simultaneously healed and broke his heart. They finished their ice cream, and Lily asked if they could walk to the nearby playground. Evelyn looked at her medical boot doubtfully, but Lily was already tugging at her hand with the kind of trust children offered so easily. I can't do much playing, Evelyn warned. That's okay. You can watch me on the swings and tell me if I'm going high enough. So they walked the 2 blocks to the playground, Lily chattering the entire way, and Daniel found himself watching Evelyn navigate the uneven sidewalk, saw the determination in her face as she refused to let the crutches slow her down. She'd approached physical recovery the same way she approached everything, with fierce, uncompromising will. At the playground, Lily ran immediately to the swings. Evelyn settled carefully on a bench, propping her injured leg on the seat beside her, and Daniel sat down as well. She's wonderful, Evelyn said quietly. You've done an incredible job with her. Most of the credit goes to Sarah. She established the foundation before he stopped, the sentence too painful to finish. I'm sure Sarah would be proud of both of you. They watched Lily pump her legs, gaining height with each arc, her laughter carrying across the playground. Other children played around them, on slides, monkey bars, the spinning merry-go-round that made Daniel's stomach turn just watching it. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said after a moment. Of course. Why did you agree to meet me? That first coffee. You could have said no. I'm your employer. There's a significant power imbalance, and I'm not exactly known for being easy to spend time with. Daniel thought about how to answer honestly. You were alone in that hallway, and you said something that stayed with me, about building a life where being left behind was expected. I recognized that feeling. After Sarah died, I built a life that was safe and small, where I didn't need anyone and no one needed me beyond Lily. It protected me from grief, but it also isolated me from everything else. And you saw that in me. I saw someone who'd survived by becoming invulnerable. But vulnerability isn't weakness, Evelyn. It's just being human. She was quiet for a long time, watching Lily swing higher and higher. My mother used to lock me in my room when I couldn't read my homework, said I wouldn't come out until I stopped being lazy and just tried harder. I'd sit there for hours, staring at words that wouldn't stay still, convinced I was defective. When I finally got diagnosed at 26, my first thought was relief. My second was rage. All those years, and it was just dyslexia. Something treatable, something that didn't mean I was stupid. Your mother was wrong. I know that intellectually, but there's a difference between knowing something and believing it. She turned to look at him. When I watch you with Lily, see the way you encourage her, celebrate her progress, never make her feel less than. I wonder what I could have become if someone had done that for me. If I'd had a parent who saw my struggles and helped instead of punished. You became a CEO. You built something remarkable. I became successful. That's not the same as happy. It's taken me 43 years to understand the difference. Lily called out from the swings. Evelyn, watch this! She launched herself from the swing at the height of its arc, flying through the air for a breathless moment before landing in the sand with a triumphant whoop. Daniel's heart jumped. He'd told her 100 times not to jump from the swings, but she was already scrambling to her feet, grinning widely. Did you see? Did you see how high I went? I saw, Evelyn called back. That was very impressive and terrifying. Please, don't give your father a heart attack. Lily ran back to them, breathless and happy. Can we come here again? The 3 of us? Daniel glanced at Evelyn, saw the hope and uncertainty warring in her expression. We'll see, sweetheart. That means yes in parent language, Lily informed Evelyn confidentially. When they say we'll see, it's basically a promise. Good to know, Evelyn said, her smile genuine and unrehearsed. They stayed another hour until the autumn sun began to sink and the temperature dropped enough that Lily's cheeks turned pink. Walking back to their cars, Lily slipped her hand into Evelyn's free hand, the one not managing a crutch, with the casual affection of children who hadn't yet learned to guard their hearts. Evelyn looked down at the small hand in hers with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. Wonder, maybe, or fear, or something like hope. "Thank you for today," she said when they reached the parking lot. "I can't remember the last time I spent an afternoon just enjoying someone's company. No agenda, no business objective, just being present." "You're welcome any time, Daniel said, and meant it. That night, after Lily was in bed, Daniel found himself thinking about the afternoon, about the easy way Evelyn had connected with his daughter, about the vulnerability she'd shared. He'd built careful walls around his life after Sarah died, letting in only what was necessary and safe. Evelyn was neither necessary nor safe. She was complicated and damaged and working through decades of trauma, one awkward interaction at a time. Getting close to her meant risking his carefully maintained equilibrium. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her smile as Lily had taken her hand, saw the longing for connection she tried so hard to hide, and he thought maybe some risks were worth taking. The following Tuesday, their regular coffee meeting, Evelyn arrived looking troubled. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked as soon as she sat down. "Am I that transparent? You're gripping that coffee cup like it personally offended you." She set the cup down and flexed her fingers. "I did something, and I'm not sure it was appropriate. I want to tell you about it, but I'm afraid you'll be angry." Daniel felt unease prickle down his spine. "Okay, tell me." "I've been thinking about Lily's reading program. It's excellent, but there are additional resources that could help. Specialized software, advanced tutoring, educational assessments that aren't covered by the scholarship." She took a breath. "I set up an education fund in her name. It's managed through Boston Children's Hospital, so it's completely separate from anything personal. No strings attached, just resources available if and when you want to use them." Daniel went very still. "How much?" "Enough to cover anything she might need through high school. Tutoring, technology, testing, summer programs. I didn't do it to make you feel obligated or to—" "How much, Evelyn?" She met his eyes. $50,000. The number hit him like a physical blow. $50,000. More money than he made in a year. Money that could transform Lily's educational opportunities, that could give her every advantage he'd never been able to provide. Money that felt like charity, like pity. "I can't accept that." His voice came out harder than he'd intended. "It's not for you to accept. It's for Lily. It's an education fund in her name, managed by the hospital. You can access it or not, but it's there. You had no right to do that without asking me. You're right. I should have discussed it with you first, but I knew you'd say no out of pride, and I couldn't let pride prevent a child from getting help she deserves." Daniel stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Several other cafe patrons glanced over, but he didn't care. "You think I can't provide for my own daughter? That she needs rescuing by someone with more money? That's not what this is. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've decided I'm not good enough, that my daughter needs someone better to take care of her." Evelyn's face went pale. "Daniel, please sit down. Let me explain." "I don't need your explanations. I need you to understand boundaries. You're not her parent. You're not family. You're someone I had coffee with a few times. That doesn't give you the right to make decisions about her life. I'm trying to help." "I didn't ask for your help. Not like this." Daniel grabbed his jacket. "I need to go." "Daniel, wait!" But he was already walking away, pushing through the cafe door into the cold November afternoon. His hands were shaking, his heart pounding with fury and something else he didn't want to examine too closely. $50,000. For Lily. For her future. And he was too proud to take it. Daniel drove home in a blur, his mind racing. He knew, intellectually, that he was overreacting. Evelyn had meant well. The money would genuinely help Lily. But the wound of inadequacy, of not being enough, of failing to provide everything his daughter needed, that wound ran deep, opened by years of struggling to make ends meet, of watching other children have opportunities Lily couldn't afford. He'd built his identity on being a good father, on giving Lily stability and love even if he couldn't give her wealth. Evelyn's gesture, however well-intentioned, felt like an indictment of everything he'd tried to be young Mrs. Patterson was waiting when he got home, Lily already in her pajamas and reading on the couch. "Everything okay?" Mrs. Patterson asked quietly, reading his face. "Fine. just a difficult day." She nodded, asked no questions, and left. Daniel sat beside Lily on the couch, and she immediately snuggled against him. "We learned about photosynthesis today," she said. "Did you know plants make their own food? That's so cool." "Very cool." "Are you sad, Daddy?" "Just tired, sweetheart." She looked up at him with Sarah's eyes, dark and perceptive. "Did you have a fight with Miss Evelyn?" "What makes you think that?" "You have your fighting face. You get it sometimes when people at work mess up." She paused. "I like Miss Evelyn. She's nice." "I know you do." "Is she going to come visit us again?" Daniel didn't know how to answer that. "Maybe. We'll see." Lily accepted this with the resilience of children and returned to her book. Daniel held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, and tried to sort through the tangle of emotions in his chest. His phone buzzed, a text from Evelyn. "I'm sorry. You were right. I should have asked first. I overstepped badly. The fund exists, but it's yours to use or refuse. I won't mention it again. I just hope you'll forgive me for trying to help in the wrong way." Daniel stared at the message for a long time. He could see her in his mind, sitting in that cafe, watching him walk away, probably convinced she'd destroyed the fragile friendship they'd built. She'd made a mistake, a significant one. But he'd made mistakes too, had let his pride override his judgment, had lashed out instead of communicating. He thought about what he'd told Lily, about being scared and what you did with that fear. He was scared of accepting help, scared of admitting he couldn't give Lily everything, scared of letting Evelyn into their lives in ways that made him vulnerable. But fear wasn't a good enough reason to push away someone who'd tried to help, even if she'd done it imperfectly. Daniel typed a response. "I overreacted. You scared me. The idea that I'm not enough for Lily, that she needs someone else to provide what I can't, that's my deepest fear as a parent. But you were trying to help, and I'm grateful even if I responded badly. Can we talk tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "Yes. Please. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I know, me too." He set his phone down and closed his eyes, Lily warm and solid against his side. Tomorrow he'd figure out how to navigate this. Tonight, he'd just hold his daughter and remember that love, at least, he could give an unlimited supply. The next morning, Daniel woke to find Lily already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her reading workbook open. "You're up early," he said, starting the coffee maker. "I wanted to practice before school. We're having a reading contest today, and I want to win." Pride swelled in his chest. 6 months ago, Lily had dreaded reading assignments. Now she was voluntarily practicing, competing, growing confident in abilities she'd once thought impossible. That was partly because of the specialist, the program at Boston Children's, the resources Evelyn had made possible. "You're going to do great," he told her. After dropping Lily at school, Daniel went to work but couldn't focus on his tasks. His mind kept circling back to yesterday's fight, to Evelyn's text, to the education fund sitting there like a gift he was too proud to accept. At noon, he texted her. "Can you meet this afternoon? My place instead of the cafe. I want to talk somewhere private." "What time?" 3 o'clock. "I'll send you the address." She arrived exactly on time, navigating the 3 flights of stairs to his apartment slowly, still using one crutch for support. Daniel opened the door before she could knock. "Hi," she said, and she looked nervous in a way he'd never seen before. Vulnerable. Uncertain. "Come in." His apartment was modest, probably a fraction of the size of her place, but it was clean and filled with evidence of the life he'd built. Lily's artwork, photos of Sarah, books stacked everywhere. Evelyn looked around with genuine interest, taking it all in. "This is nice," she said. "It feels like a home. It's what we can afford." I didn't mean it as a criticism. I meant it feels lived in, loved. My apartment is all glass and steel and designer furniture. It looks like a magazine spread, but it doesn't feel like anyone actually lives there. She sat carefully on the couch. "I'm sorry again for yesterday, for overstepping, for not asking, for making you feel like I was judging your parenting." Daniel sat in the chair across from her. "I'm sorry for walking out, for letting my pride override my judgment, for not hearing what you were actually trying to say." "Which was what? That you care about Lily, that you want to help." that you see value in making sure she has every opportunity. He paused. I've spent 6 years building my identity around being enough for her. Enough parent, enough provider, enough stability. The idea that I might not be, that terrifies me. Daniel, you're more than enough. You're an incredible father. Lily is confident, kind, curious, and happy. Those things don't come from money. They come from love and attention and showing up every day. Evelyn's voice was fierce. I wasn't trying to replace you or suggest you were inadequate. I was trying to give Lily something I never had, someone who noticed she needed help and actually provided it. No judgment, no conditions, just support. I know that now. Yesterday I couldn't see past my own fear. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken things hanging between them. The education fund, Daniel said finally. It's incredibly generous, more than I can easily accept. But I also know that refusing it out of pride helps no one, least of all Lily. So I'd like to accept it with conditions. What conditions? This stays between us. Lily doesn't need to know the details. She's 8, and that kind of money would just confuse her. Second, I maintain control over how and when the resources are used. I'm still her father. I still make the decisions about her education. Of course. And third, he met her eyes. You need to understand that this doesn't make you responsible for her. You're not her parent. You're not obligated to fix every problem or provide every solution. You're our friend, and that's enough. Evelyn's eyes were bright with emotion. I can agree to those terms. Then thank you, truly. This will change Lily's life in ways I can't fully express. I hope so. Every child deserves someone fighting for their future. She smiled, tentative but genuine, including the child I was. Daniel understood then, fully, what was really happening. Evelyn wasn't just helping Lily. She was trying to help the little girl she'd been, locked in her room with words that wouldn't stay still, convinced she was broken. You deserve better than what you got, he said quietly. Maybe, but I can't change the past. I can only try to make the present better. She shifted on the couch. I also want to apologize for something else, for inserting myself into your life without fully considering the implications. You and Lily have a good thing here, stability, routine, love. I don't want to disrupt that with my damage and complications. You're not disrupting anything. You're adding to it. Am I? Because I'm starting to feel things I have no right to feel, and I don't want to make this weird or inappropriate. Daniel's heart rate picked up. What kind of thing? Evelyn looked down at her hands. The kind where I look forward to Tuesdays more than I should. Where I think about you and Lily constantly. Where I wonder what it would be like to be part of something real instead of always watching from the outside. She laughed, brittle and self-deprecating. See? Complications. For what it's worth, Daniel said carefully, I look forward to Tuesdays too. And having you in our lives doesn't feel like a complication. It feels like the opposite. She looked up, hope and fear warring in her expression. What does it feel like? Like possibility. Like maybe the small, safe life I built isn't the only option. Like maybe there's room for something more. The silence stretched between them, heavy with meaning. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, could see the pulse jumping in Evelyn's throat. I don't know how to do this, she said finally. Relationships, connection, letting people in. I'm going to mess up constantly. Join the club. I've been a widower for 6 years. I have an 8-year-old daughter who's my entire world. I work in building maintenance and live in a 3-floor walk-up. I'm not exactly a prize. You're kind, patient, genuine, and you raised a remarkable child while grieving a profound loss. You're everything I'm not. Then maybe we balance each other. Evelyn smiled, and it was the most open, unguarded expression he'd ever seen on her face. Maybe we do. They sat talking until late afternoon, until Daniel had to leave to pick up Lily from school. As Evelyn prepared to go, carefully standing with her crutch, she paused at the door. Thank you for giving me another chance, for not writing me off. Thank you for caring about Lily, and for being brave enough to admit you wanted to be part of this. She left, and Daniel stood in his doorway watching her navigate the stairs. This complicated, brilliant woman who was slowly dismantling the armor she'd spent a lifetime building. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. Lily called. Her class reading contest went well. She came in second. She's very excited to tell you about it. Daniel smiled and headed out to pick up his daughter, thinking about second chances and new possibilities and the strange, unexpected ways that life could surprise you when you were brave enough to let it. The weeks that followed felt like learning a new language, one spoken in small gestures and careful vulnerability. Evelyn started joining them for weekend activities. The park when weather permitted, the children's museum on rainy Saturdays, Sunday morning pancakes at Daniel's apartment where she'd attempt to flip them with comically disastrous results while Lily dissolved into giggles. The medical boot came off in early December, replaced by physical therapy sessions that left her exhausted but determined. Daniel watched her integrate into their lives with a caution that gradually softened into something like wonder. She was terrible at playing pretend, approaching Lily's imagination games with the same analytical intensity she brought to quarterly projections. But she listened with complete attention when Lily explained the complex social dynamics of third-grade friendships, and she never once made the child feel foolish for her concerns. Madison said my shoes were babyish, Lily reported one Saturday while they decorated Christmas cookies at Daniel's kitchen table. She said only babies wear sneakers with sparkles. Madison sounds like she's projecting her own insecurities onto you, Evelyn said, carefully piping frosting onto a star-shaped cookie. People who feel confident don't need to criticize others' choices. Lily absorbed this with the seriousness of someone receiving profound wisdom. So I should feel sorry for her? Or just recognize that her opinion doesn't define your worth? If you like your sparkly sneakers, wear them. The right people will like you regardless. Daniel caught Evelyn's eye across the table and smiled. She was getting better at this, at understanding how to talk to children without condescension or oversimplification. She treated Lily like a small person worthy of respect, and his daughter bloomed under that attention. But underneath the domestic comfort, Daniel sensed something shifting in Evelyn. She was quieter sometimes, more introspective, and he'd catch her watching Lily with an expression he couldn't quite read, longing mixed with something that looked like fear. It came to a head 3 weeks before Christmas. Daniel had taken a half day to attend Lily's school holiday concert, and Evelyn had asked tentatively if she could join them. They'd sat together in the auditorium, watching Lily sing carols with her class, her voice clear and confident in ways it hadn't been a year ago. Afterward, they'd gone to dinner at a family-style Italian restaurant, Lily chattering about the concert, about her solo line, about how her friend Emma had forgotten the words, but nobody noticed. The evening felt easy, natural, like something they'd been doing for years rather than months. But when Daniel dropped Evelyn at her building later that night, she'd hesitated before getting out of the car. Can we talk? Tomorrow, maybe. Just us. Of course. Is something wrong? No, maybe. I don't know. She'd smiled, but it hadn't reached her eyes. I just need to tell you something, and I'd rather do it properly. They'd arranged to meet for lunch the next day at a quiet restaurant near Vision Tech. Daniel arrived first, his stomach tight with unease. Whatever Evelyn needed to say, it felt significant, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. She arrived looking professional again, back in her armor of tailored suits and perfect makeup, and Daniel realized he'd gotten used to the softer version of her, the one who wore jeans and laughed at Lily's jokes and didn't feel the need to be perfect every moment. Thank you for meeting me, she said, settling into her seat with the careful movements of someone still recovering from injury. Of course. What's going on? The server appeared, took their orders, disappeared. Evelyn folded her hands on the table and Daniel noticed they were shaking slightly. I need to tell you something, and I'm afraid it's going to change everything. His heart sank. Okay. I've been thinking a lot about Lily, about her reading progress, about the challenges she's facing, about her future. Evelyn paused. The education fund I set up. It's comprehensive, but there are additional resources that could help. Specialized private schools that focus on learning differences, summer programs with intensive support, technology and tutoring that go beyond what's currently available. Evelyn, we talked about this. The fund is already more than generous. I know, but I've been researching, and there's a school in Boston, the Landmark School, that specializes in dyslexia and language-based learning disabilities. Their program is exceptional, and they have a middle school that could be perfect for Lily when she's ready. But it's expensive, even with financial aid, and the wait list is years long unless you have connections. Daniel felt ice forming in his chest. What did you do? I called the admissions director. She's someone I know from various fundraising boards. I mentioned Lily, described her situation, and she said she'd be willing to do an early assessment, potentially bypass the usual wait list if Lily is a good fit for their program. You had no right to do that. His voice came out flat, controlled, but underneath was a fury he was struggling to contain. I know I should have asked first. Should have asked? Evelyn, we had this exact conversation a month ago. We established boundaries. You agreed that I make the decisions about Lily's education, that you're not her parent, that you don't get to arrange her life without consulting me. I'm trying to help her. You're trying to fix her. Daniel's voice rose, and several nearby diners glanced over. He lowered his volume, but not his intensity. You see Lily's dyslexia, and you see yourself, and you're trying to give her everything you didn't have. But she's not you, Evelyn. She's a happy, well-adjusted 8-year-old who's thriving in her current school with her friends and her support system. She doesn't need to be shipped off to some specialized institution because you've decided her regular life isn't good enough. Evelyn's face had gone pale. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You're making decisions about her future based on your trauma, not on what she actually needs. And you're doing it behind my back, going over my head to make arrangements without my knowledge or consent. Daniel stood, throwing his napkin on the table. I thought you understood. I thought we were past this. Daniel, please. I need you to hear me clearly. Lily is not your project. She's not a chance for you to rewrite your childhood. She's my daughter, and I decide what's best for her. Not you, not your connections, not your money. I was just trying to give her options. No, you were trying to control something, because that's what you do when you're scared. You take control, you make plans, you arrange things so they fit your vision of how they should be. But you can't control Lily's life, Evelyn. She's not yours to control. The words landed like physical blows. Evelyn's composure cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks that she didn't bother to hide. You're right, she said, her voice breaking. You're absolutely right. I overstepped again, worse than before. I let my own issues override good judgment and basic respect for your role as her father. She stood on unsteady legs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough this time. I know. She grabbed her purse, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. I'll cancel the assessment. I'll stay away from both of you. I've caused enough damage. Evelyn, but she was already walking away, moving quickly through the restaurant, and Daniel let her go. He sat back down heavily, his hands shaking with adrenaline and anger and something that felt uncomfortably like grief. The server appeared with their food, looking confused. Is your companion coming back? No, Daniel said. Just box it all up. I'm leaving. He paid the bill and drove back to work in a haze, replaying the conversation, seeing Evelyn's tears, hearing his own harsh words. She'd been wrong to go behind his back. Absolutely wrong. But the devastation on her face when he told her Lily wasn't hers to control, that had been cruel, even if it was true. Marcus found him in the maintenance office an hour later, staring at a work order without seeing it. You look like hell, boss. What happened? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. This about Ms. Cross, because the executive floor's been buzzing about how she canceled all her afternoon meetings and locked herself in her office. Daniel's chest tightened. It's complicated. Clearly, you want to talk about it? No. Marcus nodded and left him alone, but Daniel couldn't focus on work. His mind kept circling back to Evelyn, to the pattern he'd seen emerging over the past weeks. She'd been getting closer to Lily, more invested, more involved. And every time she pulled back or tried to establish distance, she'd do something like this, make grand gestures, arrange resources, try to solve problems with money and connections. It was how she showed love, he realized. The only way she knew how. But it wasn't enough, and it wasn't appropriate, and she needed to understand that before she caused real harm. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. This is Principal Morrison. There's been an incident during the after-school program. Lily is safe, but we need you to come to the school immediately. Daniel's heart stopped. He was moving before he'd fully processed the words, grabbing his keys, running for his truck. The drive to Lily's school took 6 minutes that felt like 60, his mind conjuring every possible disaster. He found Principal Morrison waiting in the front office, her expression carefully neutral. "What happened? Is Lily hurt?" "She's physically fine. She's in my office with Mrs. Patterson, but there was an incident during dismissal that we need to discuss." Daniel followed her down the hallway, his pulse hammering. Through the office window, he could see Lily sitting in a chair, Mrs. Patterson beside her, his daughter's face blotchy and tear-streaked. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself at him as soon as he entered, and Daniel caught her, holding her tight. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. What happened?" Principal Morrison closed the door and sat behind her desk. There was a fire drill during the after-school program. Standard procedure, nothing unusual. The children evacuated appropriately, but when we did the head count outside, Lily was missing. Daniel's blood ran cold. Missing. We found her quickly. She was in the second-floor bathroom, but she was locked inside and extremely distressed. It took us 15 minutes to calm her down enough to unlock the door. "I couldn't get out," Lily sobbed against his chest. "The alarm was so loud and I couldn't find the door, and everyone left me and I was scared, Daddy. I was so scared." "Shh, baby. It's okay. You're safe now." "We believe she experienced a panic attack," Principal Morrison said gently. "She was hyperventilating when we reached her, and it took significant time to help her regulate her breathing. We've never seen this kind of reaction from her before. Has she had anxiety issues we should be aware of?" Daniel held Lily closer, his mind racing. "No, nothing like this. She's always been fine with fire drills. Is there anything else happening? Changes at home, stressful situations, anything that might have triggered this response?" He thought about the past months, about Evelyn entering their lives, about the fight this afternoon, about all the ways their stable routine had been disrupted by complicated adult emotions. "There have been some changes recently," he admitted. "Nothing that should have caused this, but maybe it's been more stressful than I realized. I want to recommend that Lily see the school counselor, just to talk through what happened today, develop some coping strategies for anxiety. Would that be acceptable?" "Yes, of course. Whatever she needs." They talked for another 10 minutes about support plans and follow-up, but Daniel barely heard it. All his attention was on Lily, shaking in his arms, terrified in ways she hadn't been since she was very small and Sarah had just died. He carried her to the truck. She was getting too big to carry, but she clung to him like a much younger child and drove home in silence. Mrs. Patterson had offered to stay with her, but Daniel had declined. This was something he needed to handle himself. At home, he settled Lily on the couch with her favorite blanket and made hot chocolate, the ritualistic comfort of childhood. She drank it in small sips, her hands still trembling slightly. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" he asked gently. "The alarm went off and everyone started leaving, and I was in the bathroom, and I heard them all going down the stairs." Her voice was small, frightened. "I tried to open the door, but it was stuck. It sticks sometimes. You have to pull hard. And I couldn't get it open, and everyone was leaving, and I thought they'd forget about me like what happened to Miss Evelyn." Daniel's heart clenched. "Oh, sweetheart. We would never forget about you. Never. But you forgot about Miss Evelyn during that fire drill at her work. She was all alone and hurt, and everyone left, and nobody noticed. Someone noticed. I noticed. And I went back for her. But what if nobody notices me? What if I get stuck and everyone leaves and nobody comes back?" The tears started again, flowing down her cheeks. "I was so scared, Daddy. I couldn't breathe right, and everything felt too loud, and I thought I was going to be alone forever." Daniel pulled her close, rocking her gently. "You will never be alone, Lily. I will always notice if you're missing. Always. I promise you that. But what if something happens to you? What if you're not there?" It was the fear underneath all fears, the one she'd been carrying since Sarah died. The terror that everyone she loved would disappear, that she'd be left alone and unprotected in a world too big and dangerous for one small girl. "Then Mrs. Patterson will notice, and your teachers, and your friends, and Miss Evelyn." He said her name without thinking and realized it was true. Evelyn would notice if Lily was missing. She'd notice, and she'd care, and she'd do everything in her considerable power to help. "Is Miss Evelyn still our friend? I heard you on the phone yesterday, and you sounded mad." Daniel hesitated, unsure how much truth an 8-year-old could handle. We had a disagreement. Adults do that sometimes. But yes, she's still our friend. Good, because I like her. She's nice and she listens and she doesn't think I'm stupid because reading is hard. You're not stupid, sweetheart. You're brilliant. I know. Miss Evelyn told me that smart people's brains just work different sometimes, and that's okay. Lily yawned, exhaustion catching up with her. Can I call her to tell her I'm okay? Because she was scared when she got stuck, so maybe she'd understand about being scared. The request hit Daniel like a fist to the chest. His daughter, who'd just experienced a trauma, wanted to reach out to someone who'd understand that fear, and that someone was the woman he'd just told to stay away. Maybe tomorrow, honey. It's getting late. But as he tucked Lily into bed that night, reading her extra stories until she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from an unexpected source. It was Jeremy Chen from Vision Tech. Daniel, I'm sorry to contact you after hours, but Evelyn asked me to reach out. She wanted you to know that she's canceled the school assessment and withdrawn any inquiries she made on Lily's behalf. She also wanted to apologize again and to ask if Lily is okay. Apparently there was some kind of incident at her school today that showed up on a news alert about emergency services being called. Evelyn is concerned but doesn't want to overstep by contacting you directly. Daniel stared at the message. Emergency services. The fire department had come for the drill, and someone must have posted about it on local social media. Evelyn had been monitoring, watching from a distance, worried but respecting the boundaries he'd demanded. He thought about her face in the restaurant, about the tears she hadn't bothered to hide, about the way she'd looked at Lily during the holiday concert, like someone witnessing something precious and unreachable. He thought about Lily asking to call her, wanting to share her fear with someone who would understand, and he thought about his own words. She's not yours to control. He'd been right about the boundaries, right about needing to maintain his role as Lily's father, but he'd been cruel in his delivery, had taken his own fear and anger and used it as a weapon against someone who was trying, however imperfectly, to be part of their lives. Daniel typed a response to Jeremy. Please tell Evelyn that Lily is physically fine but had a panic attack during a fire drill. She got separated from her class and was alone during the evacuation, which triggered significant anxiety. I'll keep her updated if she wants, but I understand if she needs space. The response came quickly. Evelyn says she's glad Lily is okay and that she's available if you need anything, no strings attached. She also says she's truly sorry for overstepping and that she understands if you don't want her involved anymore. Daniel looked at his sleeping daughter, at the fear still visible even in sleep, and made a decision that terrified him. Tell her I'd like to talk. In person. Tomorrow if possible. I'll let her know. The next morning, Daniel took Lily to Mrs. Patterson's house. She was staying home from school on the counselor's recommendation and drove to Vision Tech. He texted Evelyn to ask if she could meet him in the building's courtyard, somewhere neutral and private. She was already there when he arrived, sitting on a bench in the winter sunshine, looking smaller somehow. She stood when she saw him, her expression guarded. Thank you for meeting me, Daniel said. Of course. How is Lily? Shaken. Scared. She had a panic attack yesterday during a fire drill, got separated from her class and locked herself in a bathroom, convinced everyone had forgotten about her. Evelyn's hand went to her throat. Oh God, is she... She's physically fine. Emotionally, she's processing. The school counselor is going to work with her. He sat on the bench, and after a moment, Evelyn sat beside him. She asked about you, wanted to call you because she thought you'd understand about being scared and alone. She's so perceptive. She is, and she's right. You would understand, better than almost anyone. Daniel turned to face her. I owe you an apology. Yesterday, I was cruel. I was right about the boundaries, right that you overstepped, but I was wrong in how I handled it. I took my fear and anger and I hurt you with it, and that wasn't fair. You had every right to be angry. Maybe, but I didn't have the right to weaponize that anger. You've been trying so hard to be part of our lives, to help in the only ways you know how, and I threw that back in your face. Evelyn's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I did overstep, badly. I've been doing it repeatedly, making decisions about Lily without consulting you, trying to arrange her life because I'm terrified of losing control. Because when I was her age, no one helped me, and I want so desperately to give her what I didn't have that I can't see when I'm crossing lines. I know, and I understand the impulse. But Lily isn't you, and fixing her life won't fix your childhood. I know that intellectually, but the heart doesn't always listen to the brain. She wiped at her eyes impatiently. The truth is, I'm scared, Daniel. I'm scared of caring this much about people I have no claim to. I'm scared of building something real and having it fall apart because I don't know how to do relationships without controlling them. I'm scared that you're going to realize I'm too damaged, too difficult, and decide we're better off without me. Are you done catastrophizing? She laughed wetly. Probably not. It's kind of my default setting. Then let me tell you what I see. I see someone who's learning to be vulnerable, who's working through decades of trauma, one imperfect step at a time. I see someone who loves my daughter in ways that are sometimes misguided but always genuine. And I see someone who's terrified of being left behind again, so she tries to make herself indispensable with grand gestures instead of trusting that people might just want her around for who she is. Evelyn was crying openly now. I don't know how to trust that. I know. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to establish some actual boundaries, clear ones that we both agree to. You don't make decisions about Lily's education or future without consulting me first. No surprise school applications, no arranged assessments, nothing that affects her life without my explicit approval. Agreed. But in exchange, I promise to include you, to ask your opinion, to value your input, to treat you like someone who matters in Lily's life instead of like an outsider I'm grudgingly tolerating. Because you're not an outsider, Evelyn. You're important to both of us, and we want you around. Not because of what you can provide or arrange, but because of who you are. Who I am is a mess. Who you are is someone worth knowing, someone worth caring about, someone who's brave enough to keep trying even when it's terrifying. Daniel reached out and took her hand. We're all messes, Evelyn. The question is whether we're willing to be messy together. She gripped his hand like a lifeline. Lily really asked about me? She did. She wants to talk to you about being scared during fire drills. She thinks you'd understand. I would. I really would. Evelyn took a shaky breath. Can I see her? Talk to her? I know you might not want... She'd like that. Actually, I was hoping you might be willing to share your story with her. About being trapped, about being scared, about how you got through it. I think it might help her process what happened. Are you sure that's appropriate? I think it's exactly what she needs. Someone who understands that fear isn't weakness, that being scared is okay, that you can survive being alone and come out stronger. He paused. Someone who shows her that the people who care about you notice when you're missing. Evelyn nodded, unable to speak. They sat in silence for a moment, hands clasped, the winter sun warming their faces. I'm going to mess this up again, Evelyn said finally. I'm going to overstep or control or do something that crosses a line. It's what I do. And when you do, we'll talk about it. We'll fight maybe, work through it, and figure out how to do better next time. That's what people who care about each other do. People who care about each other, she repeated softly, testing the words. Is that what we are? Daniel thought about the past months, about coffee and ice cream and Christmas cookies, about watching someone learn to be vulnerable, about the space Evelyn had carved out in their lives. Yes, he said. That's exactly what we are. They made plans to visit Lily that afternoon together, and Daniel drove back to Mrs. Patterson's house with something warm unfurling in his chest. It wasn't simple, what they were building. It was complicated and messy and would require constant negotiation. But maybe the best things always were. When Evelyn arrived that afternoon, Lily ran to her immediately, wrapping her arms around Evelyn's waist with the uncomplicated affection of childhood. Daddy said you wanted to talk to me about being scared, Lily said. Evelyn knelt down to her level, wincing slightly. Her ankles still bothered her sometimes. I did, because I know exactly how it feels to be alone during a fire drill, to think everyone forgot about you, to be so scared you can't breathe right. You do? I do. It happened to me when I was 8 years old, just like you, and it was one of the scariest moments of my entire life. What did you do? I cried a lot. I banged on the door until my hands hurt, and when someone finally found me, I held onto them so tight they probably couldn't breathe. Evelyn smiled gently. Being scared doesn't make you a baby, Lily. It makes you human. And asking for help when you're scared is one of the bravest things you can do. Lily absorbed this solemnly. Were you really all alone in that building when you broke your ankle? I was, for about 30 minutes, and I was terrified, just like you were yesterday. But you want to know what I learned? The people who care about you notice when you're gone. Your daddy noticed I was missing even when nobody else did. And yesterday, your principal and teachers noticed you were missing right away. You're not invisible, sweetheart. You're seen and loved and important to so many people. Including you? Evelyn's voice broke slightly. Especially me. Daniel watched them from the doorway, his daughter and this woman who was learning to love imperfectly, but with her whole heart, and felt the walls he'd built around his life begin to crumble in ways that no longer felt frightening. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward despite it. Not perfect families, but chosen ones. Not invulnerability, but the strength to be broken and still show up. And maybe, just maybe, they were all going to be okay. That conversation became the turning point, though none of them recognized it at the time. Over the following weeks, something shifted in the dynamic between the three of them. Evelyn stopped trying to fix everything with money and connections, and Daniel stopped viewing her involvement as a threat to his role as Lily's father. Instead, they learned to navigate the messy middle ground where boundaries existed but weren't walls, where help could be offered and accepted without shame. Lily's anxiety about fire drills persisted, but the school counselor worked with her on breathing techniques and coping strategies. Evelyn attended one of the sessions at Lily's request, sharing her own experience with childhood trauma in terms an 8-year-old could understand. The counselor had been impressed by Evelyn's honesty, by her willingness to be vulnerable in service of helping a child feel less alone. "You're good with her," Daniel told Evelyn afterward as they walked to their cars in the school parking lot. "I'm fumbling through it mostly, but I'm trying." Trying is enough. Christmas approached with the kind of relentless cheer that Boston specialized in. Lights strung across every street, storefront windows transformed into winter wonderlands, carols playing in every shop. Daniel had always loved this time of year, the way the city softened around the edges, the way people smiled at strangers and held doors open and remembered that kindness mattered. This year felt different, though, lighter somehow, despite the complications. "What are you doing for Christmas?" Lily asked Evelyn during one of their now regular Sunday pancake mornings. She'd become remarkably proficient at flipping them, much to everyone's surprise. "I hadn't really made plans," Evelyn admitted. "Usually I work through the holidays. Fewer people in the office means more productivity." Lily looked horrified. "But it's Christmas! You can't work on Christmas!" "Some people don't celebrate it, sweetheart," Daniel said gently. "But Miss Evelyn does celebrate it, right?" Lily turned to Evelyn with the intensity of childhood interrogation. "You have a Christmas tree and everything?" "I have a tree. My assistant arranges it every year. Very tasteful, all white and silver." "That sounds boring. Our tree has every ornament I've ever made since I was a baby. Daddy says it looks like a craft store exploded, but in a good way." Evelyn laughed, and Daniel noticed how much easier her laughter came now, how the sharp edges of her personality had softened without losing their essential shape. "That sounds much better than tasteful." "You should spend Christmas with us," Lily announced with the confidence of someone who hadn't yet learned that invitations were usually extended by adults. "We make cinnamon rolls for breakfast, and then we open presents, and then Daddy makes this really good dinner, and we watch movies, and it's the best day ever." Daniel caught Evelyn's eye, saw the longing and uncertainty warring in her expression. "You'd be welcome," he said quietly. "If you'd like to join us, no pressure, but Lily's right. It's a good day. And you shouldn't spend it alone in a tasteful apartment. I don't want to intrude on your traditions." "You wouldn't be intruding. You'd be adding to them." Evelyn's smile was tentative but genuine. "Then I'd love to. Thank you." Lily cheered and immediately began planning what Evelyn should bring, what they'd watch, how they'd arrange the day. Daniel listened to his daughter orchestrate Christmas with the same determination she brought to everything, and felt grateful for her uncomplicated acceptance of the ways their family was expanding. The week before Christmas, Daniel finished his shift at Vision Tech and found an envelope on his desk in the maintenance office. His name was written on the front in Evelyn's precise handwriting. Inside was a card, not an expensive one, just something simple from a drugstore, and a handwritten note. "Daniel, I wanted to give you something for Christmas, but everything I considered felt like I was trying to buy my way into your good graces again. Then I realized the best gift I could give is honesty and vulnerability, which terrify me but seem important. So here it is. Thank you for noticing when I was missing. Thank you for coming back for me when you had every reason to follow protocol and wait. Thank you for letting me into your life even when I've given you reasons to shut me out. Thank you for teaching me that being vulnerable isn't the same as being weak. You and Lily have changed my life in ways I'm still learning to articulate. I hope this Christmas is the first of many we spend together. Evelyn. Daniel read the note 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in his wallet, next to a photo of Sarah and Lily taken years ago. Some things were worth keeping close. Christmas morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of Boston winter day where the sky was impossibly blue and everything sparkled with frost. Lily woke Daniel at 6:30, vibrating with excitement, and they made cinnamon rolls together while Christmas music played from his phone. Evelyn arrived at 8, looking nervous in jeans and a soft red sweater that made her seem younger, more approachable. She carried a bag of gifts that she set down with the careful uncertainty of someone navigating unfamiliar territory. "Merry Christmas," Daniel said, pulling her into a hug that surprised them both. She melted into it for a moment, then stepped back, her cheeks flushed. "Merry Christmas. Something smells amazing." "Cinnamon rolls. Come on, they're almost ready." Lily grabbed Evelyn's hand and dragged her into the kitchen, chattering about the presents under the tree, about the special breakfast tradition, about everything and nothing. They ate cinnamon rolls at the small kitchen table, and Daniel watched Evelyn slowly relax into the casual warmth of the morning. She asked Lily about her Christmas list, listened to elaborate descriptions of each hoped-for gift, and smiled with genuine affection at his daughter's enthusiasm. After breakfast, they moved to the living room for presents. Lily opened hers with the systematic approach of someone who wanted to savor each gift: books from Daniel, art supplies, a new winter coat she actually needed but had been presented as something exciting. From Evelyn, a building set that focused on engineering principles, chosen because Lily had mentioned an interest in how bridges were constructed. "This is so cool!" Lily immediately dumped the pieces on the floor and began studying the instruction manual. "Look, Daddy, you can build a drawbridge that actually moves." Daniel opened his gifts next, practical things from Lily like new work gloves and a flashlight, a book he'd mentioned wanting from Evelyn. Then he handed Evelyn her gift, suddenly nervous about whether he'd chosen correctly. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "I thought maybe you could use it for something other than work," Daniel said. "Personal thoughts, reflections, whatever you want. A space that's just yours, not connected to productivity or quarterly projections." Evelyn ran her fingers over the leather, her eyes suspiciously bright. "It's perfect. Thank you." "I have something for you too," Lily announced, producing a wrapped package she'd clearly done herself, complete with about a mile of tape. "I made it in art class." Evelyn opened it to find a painting of 3 figures, clearly Daniel, Lily, and herself, standing together under a tree. The proportions were off and the colors were enthusiastic rather than realistic, but the intent was unmistakable. "It's us," Lily explained unnecessarily. "That's you, and that's Daddy, and that's me. We're a family." The words hung in the air, simple and profound. Evelyn stared at the painting, tears streaming down her face without any attempt to hide them. "Lily," she said, her voice breaking, "this is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." "Really? Because the tree looks kind of weird." "The tree is perfect. All of it is perfect." Evelyn pulled Lily into a fierce hug, and over his daughter's head she met Daniel's eyes. In that look was everything they hadn't yet said out loud: gratitude, affection, the tentative hope that maybe this imperfect, cobbled-together family could actually work. They spent the rest of the morning building the bridge set, all 3 of them on the floor surrounded by tiny pieces and instructions. Evelyn approached it with the same analytical intensity she brought to everything, while Lily's enthusiasm frequently resulted in pieces being attached in creative but structurally unsound ways. Daniel mediated between precision and chaos, and somehow they ended up with a functioning drawbridge that Lily immediately wanted to test with her toy cars. For lunch, they made sandwiches and hot chocolate, easy and informal. Evelyn told stories about disastrous Christmases from her childhood. The year her mother forgot to buy presents, the year she'd been left alone because her parents had gone to a party and forgotten she existed. "That's terrible," Lily said with the righteous indignation of childhood. "Parents aren't supposed to forget about their kids." "You're absolutely right, but sometimes parents make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes hurt." Evelyn glanced at Daniel. "The important thing is learning from them so you don't repeat them." Later, while Lily was absorbed in a new book, Daniel and Evelyn cleaned up the kitchen together, moving around each other with the easy familiarity they'd developed over months of shared meals and conversations. "Thank you for today," Evelyn said quietly, "for including me. This is the best Christmas I've ever had." "You're welcome here anytime. You know that, right?" "I'm starting to believe it, slowly." Daniel dried the last dish and turned to face her. "I have something else for you. I was going to wait, but this feels like the right moment." He pulled a small wrapped box from his pocket. Evelyn looked at it with curiosity and slight apprehension. "Daniel, you already gave me the journal. Just open it." She unwrapped the box to find a key inside. Not a fancy one, just a regular house key on a simple ring. "It's a key to my apartment," Daniel said. "I'm not asking you to move in or making any grand declarations. I'm just saying that you're welcome here, always. You don't have to knock or wait for an invitation. This is your space too if you want it to be." Evelyn held the key like it was made of something precious and fragile. "Are you sure? This is a big step." "I'm sure. You're part of our lives now, Evelyn. Part of our family. And family has keys." She kissed him then, quick and impulsive, then pulled back with wide eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Daniel kissed her back, slower, more intentional. When they separated, both slightly breathless, he smiled. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks." "Me too, but I wasn't sure if it was appropriate, given everything." "Probably not entirely appropriate, but I've discovered that the best things in my life rarely are." They heard Lily coming back into the kitchen and stepped apart, though not before his daughter caught the tail end of their proximity and grinned knowingly. "Are you guys dating now? Because Emma's mom has a boyfriend, and they hold hands and stuff." Daniel and Evelyn exchanged glances, and he saw his own mixture of hope and uncertainty reflected in her eyes. "Would that be okay with you?" he asked Lily. "If Miss Evelyn and I dated?" Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to important decisions. "Will she still come over for pancakes?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Will you still help me with my reading?" "Always." "Will you be nice to Daddy and not make him sad?" "I'll try my very best, and if I mess up, I'll apologize and try to do better. That's all anyone can do." Lily nodded, satisfied. "Then it's okay with me, but no gross kissing where I can see it." They both laughed, the tension breaking, and the rest of the day unfolded with easy warmth. They made dinner together, nothing fancy, just roast chicken and vegetables, and watched Christmas movies while Lily fell asleep between them on the couch. Daniel carried her to bed, and when he returned, he found Evelyn looking at Lily's painting, the one declaring them a family. "Do you think it's crazy?" she asked quietly, "that I want this so much? I spent 43 years convinced I didn't need anyone, and now the thought of losing this terrifies me more than anything." "It's not crazy. It's human. And you're not going to lose us, Evelyn. We're not going anywhere. People always leave. In my experience, everyone leaves eventually. Then will be your new experience, the one that proves the pattern wrong." He sat beside her, taking her hand. "I can't promise we'll never fight or that everything will be perfect. But I can promise we'll keep showing up. We'll keep trying. We'll keep noticing when you're missing." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, the apartment warm and quiet around them. 2 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon in February, Daniel was finishing a repair on the 18th floor when the fire alarm went off. His first instinct was to check his phone. No drill scheduled for today. His second was to immediately think of Lily at school, but she'd be fine. She'd been working with the counselor and doing much better with her anxiety. His third thought was Evelyn. She was in the building today. He'd seen her car in the executive parking earlier, and while she'd made tremendous progress with her mobility and confidence, Fire drills still triggered something in her, a visceral response she was learning to manage but hadn't entirely conquered. Daniel made his way to the stairwell, joining the stream of employees evacuating in orderly fashion. He kept his radio on, listening to the security team coordinate the evacuation, counting floors as they cleared. Floor 23 cleared. Everyone accounted for, except the message that came through made his blood run cold. Security to all units, we have a report of a child trapped on floor 23. Female, approximately 8 years old, locked in conference room C. Repeat, child trapped on 23. It couldn't be. Lily was at school, safe with her class, nowhere near Vision Tech. But Daniel was already turning around, pushing against the flow of evacuation, taking stairs 2 at a time. Behind him, he heard security calling for him to stop, to follow protocol, but he didn't care about protocol. If there was a child trapped and scared, he was going to help them. He burst onto the 23rd floor and ran toward the conference rooms. Through the glass walls of conference room C, he could see a small figure huddled in the corner, arms wrapped around knees, rocking slightly. Not Lily, but still a child, still terrified, still alone. Daniel tried the door, locked, just like last time. But this time he had his override key, the one he'd kept after the Moore override incident, the one that proved sometimes breaking protocol was the right choice. He unlocked the door and entered slowly, not wanting to startle the child. "Hey there, I'm Daniel. I'm here to help. You're safe now." The girl looked up, and Daniel's heart nearly stopped. It was Lily, his daughter, who should have been at school, who was somehow on the 23rd floor of Vision Tech during a fire drill, her face streaked with tears and twisted with fear. "Daddy!" She launched herself at him, sobbing, and he caught her, holding her tight while his mind raced through impossible explanations. "What are you doing here? How did you get here?" "We had a field trip," Lily gasped between sobs. "To see where you work. Miss Evelyn arranged it for my class. She was giving us a tour of the building and showing us technology stuff. And then the alarm went off, and everyone ran, and I went to find a bathroom, and I got lost, and the door got stuck, and I couldn't get out, and everyone left me again. Daddy, they left me again." Daniel's heart was breaking and rebuilding simultaneously. Evelyn had arranged a field trip. She'd brought Lily's class here to show them where he worked, probably thinking it would be educational and fun and a chance to include him in Lily's school life. And then the worst possible thing had happened. "Shh, baby, I've got you. You're safe. I'm here." He stood, lifting her even though she was getting too big for it, and carried her toward the stairwell. His radio crackled. "Daniel, this is Evelyn. Is Lily? Please tell me she's okay." He keyed the radio with one hand. "I have her. She's safe. Meet us in the parking lot." "Thank God, thank God." The evacuation was nearly complete when they emerged from the building. Daniel could see the fire trucks, the assembled employees, and standing at the front of a group of third graders was Evelyn, her face white with terror. She ran toward them the moment she saw Lily, her professional composure completely shattered. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I thought it would be fun and educational, and I had it all planned with the teachers, and I never imagined there'd be a drill, and I was doing a head count, and she was missing, and I couldn't find her, and Evelyn, breathe, she's okay." But Evelyn was crying now, fully breaking down in a way he'd never seen. "I lost her. I brought her here, and I lost her, and she was trapped and scared. And it's my fault. I did exactly what I promised I wouldn't do. I put her in danger because I was trying to be helpful, and I'm so sorry." Lily reached out from Daniel's arms and touched Evelyn's face. "It's okay, Miss Evelyn. You didn't know there'd be a fire drill, and Daddy found me. He always finds me. But you were so scared." "I was. But then I remembered what you told me, about how the people who care about us notice when we're gone. And Daddy noticed right away, and you noticed, and I wasn't really alone because I knew you'd both come looking for me." Evelyn sobbed harder, and Daniel shifted Lily to one arm so he could pull Evelyn close with the other. They stood like that in the parking lot, the three of them holding each other while Lily's classmates watched with interest, and the fire department completed their inspection. Later, after Lily's teacher had taken the class back to school with profuse apologies for the disruption, after the fire department had confirmed it was a false alarm triggered by faulty equipment, after everything had returned to normal, the three of them sat in Daniel's truck in the Vision Tech parking lot. I should never have arranged the field trip, Evelyn said dully. I should have asked you first. I should have considered all the variables. You should have trusted your instinct that Lily would enjoy seeing where I work and learning about technology. Daniel interrupted. You couldn't have predicted a false alarm. This wasn't your fault. But I brought her here. I put her in a position where she got scared, yes, but also where she learned that even when things go wrong, people show up for her. I showed up. You showed up. We all showed up. He took her hand. You didn't fail her, Evelyn. You proved exactly what she needed to learn, that she's not alone. Lily, buckled in the back seat, leaned forward. Can I say something? Of course, sweetheart. I was really scared when the door got stuck. Like, the most scared I've been since the first time. But it was different this time. Different how? Evelyn asked. Because I knew you'd notice I was missing, both of you. I wasn't worried that everyone would leave and forget about me. I was just worried about being stuck until you found me. And you did find me, really fast. She smiled at her father. Daddy's good at finding people. Daniel felt his throat tighten. That's my job, Lilypad. Noticing when people are missing and making sure they're okay. Like you noticed Miss Evelyn when she was trapped. Exactly like that. Lily turned to Evelyn. See? You didn't mess up. You helped me learn that even when scary things happen, my family finds me, because that's what families do. Evelyn looked at Lily with wonder. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You guys just didn't notice because you were too busy being worried about stuff. They all laughed, the tension finally breaking, and Daniel started the truck to drive them home. But Evelyn's hand remained in his, and Lily kept up a steady stream of chatter about the field trip, about the cool technology she'd seen, about how her friends thought it was amazing that her dad was the one who'd rescued her. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Evelyn sat on his small balcony despite the February cold, wrapped in blankets and drinking tea. I keep replaying it, Evelyn said quietly. The moment I realized she was missing, the terror, the absolute certainty that I'd failed in the worst possible way. But you didn't fail. I brought her to the building. I created the situation where she learned resilience, where she learned that scary things can happen and she can survive them. Where she learned that her family shows up. Daniel set his tea down. Evelyn, you need to stop punishing yourself for not being perfect. Lily doesn't need perfect. She needs present. She needs people who care enough to keep trying even when they mess up. She needs you exactly as you are. I'm terrified I'm going to damage her, that my issues are going to become her issues. Then we'll deal with it together. We'll get her therapy if she needs it. We'll talk through her fears. We'll help her build coping strategies. That's what parents do. We don't prevent our kids from ever experiencing fear or pain. We teach them how to navigate it. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you think about the future, our future, what do you see? Daniel considered the question carefully. I see Lily growing up with two parents who love her unconditionally. I see Sunday morning pancakes and homework help, and teaching her to drive someday. I see you learning to accept that you're part of this family, that you belong here, that you don't have to earn your place. I see us making mistakes and working through them and building something imperfect but real. You see me as her parent? I see you as someone who loves her like a parent, who shows up for her like a parent, who's learning to put her needs first. If that's not a parent, I don't know what is. Evelyn's hands were shaking. I don't have legal rights. If something happened to you, I'd have no claim to her. I'd lose her. Daniel pulled out his phone and opened his email, then handed it to Evelyn. On the screen was a draft message to his lawyer. I've been working on updating my will, he said, adding you as Lily's legal guardian in the event something happens to me. I hadn't sent it yet because I wanted to talk to you first, make sure you'd be willing to take on that responsibility. But yes, I see you as her parent, Evelyn, and I want to make that official. She stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. You trust me with her? After everything? I trust you with her because of everything. Because you've shown up consistently. Because you've done the work to be better. Because you love her fiercely and imperfectly and you're willing to keep learning. That's all any parent can do. Evelyn set the phone down and buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Daniel pulled her close, letting her cry. understanding that sometimes joy and fear and hope all felt like grief because they involved letting go of the person you used to be. "I never thought I'd have this," she said finally. "A family. People who chose me not because of what I could provide, but just because they wanted me around. Well, you have it now. We're yours, Evelyn. Imperfect and complicated and sometimes a mess, but yours." They sat in the cold February night, holding each other, and Daniel thought about the past year. About being trapped in an empty building and trusting his instinct to go back. About coffee meetings that became friendships, that became family. About a daughter learning to trust that she wouldn't be forgotten, and a woman learning to trust that she deserved to be found. Inside, through the sliding glass door, he could see into Lily's room where she slept peacefully. No longer afraid of fire drills, no longer convinced she'd be left behind. She'd learned what Evelyn was still learning, what they were all learning together, that being vulnerable enough to need people wasn't weakness. It was the courage to believe you were worth showing up for. 3 months later, Daniel stood in his apartment getting ready for dinner, adjusting his tie for the third time. Lily sat on his bed, already dressed in her favorite purple dress, watching him with amusement. "You're nervous," she observed. "I'm not nervous. You fixed that tie like 100 times. You only do that when you're nervous." Daniel smiled at his daughter's perceptiveness. "Okay, maybe a little nervous." "Why?" "It's just Miss Evelyn. She's seen you in your work clothes with grease on your face. She's not going to care if your tie is perfect." "It's not about the tie, sweetheart. It's about tonight being special." They were going to dinner at a nice restaurant, the three of them, to celebrate Evelyn's 44th birthday. But it was more than that. It was 6 months since that Christmas when everything had shifted, 6 months of learning to be a family, 6 months of mistakes and apologies and showing up anyway. It was time to make some things official. Evelyn arrived exactly on time, wearing a navy dress that made her eyes look impossibly blue. She'd let her hair grow longer, softening her appearance, and she smiled with the ease of someone who'd learned to be comfortable in her own happiness. "You both look beautiful," she said, and Lily preened. "Daddy's been nervous all afternoon. He changed clothes 3 times. "Lily," Daniel said in mild warning. "What? It's true." They drove to the restaurant, an upscale Italian place that Daniel had saved for months to afford. Lily chattered the entire way about school, about her latest reading achievement, about the summer camp she wanted to attend. Evelyn listened with complete attention, asking questions, celebrating each accomplishment. Dinner was excellent, and the conversation flowed easily. They'd become practiced at this, at being together, at navigating the space between 3 people who'd chosen to become a family. There were still rough patches. Evelyn still sometimes tried to solve problems with money instead of communication. Daniel still sometimes struggled with accepting help. And Lily was learning to navigate having 2 authority figures instead of 1. But they worked through it with patience and honesty and the understanding that perfection was impossible and unnecessary. After dinner, as they were waiting for dessert, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 small boxes. "I have something for both of you," he said. Lily's eyes went wide. "Presents? But it's Miss Evelyn's birthday, not mine." "This is for both of you. For us, really." He handed 1 box to Evelyn and 1 to Lily. "Open them together." They did, revealing matching necklaces, delicate silver chains with 3 interconnected circles, each circle engraved with initials, E, D, and L. "They represent us," Daniel explained. 3 separate people, but connected. A family. Lily immediately put hers on. "I love it. Look, the circles move, but they can't come apart." Evelyn was staring at hers with tears in her eyes. "Daniel, there's something else." He took a breath, suddenly more nervous than he'd been in years. "Evelyn, I know we've only been officially together for 6 months, but I've been falling in love with you since the day I found you in that hallway. You've become essential to our lives, to our family. Lily and we can't imagine our future without you in it." He pulled out a 3rd box, this one smaller, and opened it to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, with 3 small diamonds representing the 3 of them. "I'm not asking you to marry me right now. I know you need time, and we need to take this at a pace that works for everyone. But I'm asking if you'll consider it. If you'll consider making this official, making us permanent. If you'll consider being not just Lily's guardian on paper, but my partner, my wife, her mother, will you think about it?" Evelyn covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming freely. Lily was bouncing in her seat with barely contained excitement. "Say yes, Miss Evelyn. Say yes!" "Lily, she needs time to think." "I don't need time," Evelyn interrupted. "I've spent 44 years being alone, being afraid, being convinced I didn't deserve this kind of happiness. I'm done wasting time. Yes, Daniel. Yes to all of it. Yes to being a family. Yes to being permanent. Yes to everything." Lily cheered loud enough that other diners turned to look, but none of them cared. Daniel slipped the ring onto Evelyn's finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that was witnessed by half the restaurant and felt like a promise being kept. When they separated, Lily was crying happy tears. "Does this mean you're going to be my mom? Like, for real?" Evelyn knelt beside Lily's chair, taking both of her small hands. "If that's okay with you. I know I'll never replace your mother, Sarah. She was special and important, and she'll always be a part of you. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be your mom too. You can have two moms who love you, one who you carry in your heart, and one who's here with you every day." "I'd like that," Lily said solemnly. "And I think my mom Sarah would like it too. She'd be happy that Daddy isn't alone anymore, and that I have someone else to love me." They cried together, all three of them, while dessert arrived and went cold and the restaurant staff politely pretended not to notice. Later that night, after they'd gotten home and put Lily to bed, Daniel and Evelyn stood in his kitchen, their kitchen, because she'd been staying over more nights than not, and held each other in comfortable silence. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a dream," Evelyn said. "That I'm still in that empty building, alone and broken, and this was just a fantasy I created to cope with the fear. It's real, we're real, and you're not alone anymore." "I'm not. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely not alone." She pulled back to look at him. "Thank you for noticing I was missing, for trusting your instinct, for coming back for me when you had every reason to follow protocol and stay safe. Thank you for being brave enough to let us in, for doing the hard work of healing, for loving Lily the way you do. She's easy to love. You both are." They stood together while the city hummed outside the windows, while Lily slept peacefully down the hall, while the future stretched out before them full of possibility and promise. 6 months later, on a warm September afternoon, they stood in a small courthouse with Lily between them, officially finalizing Evelyn's adoption of Daniel's daughter. The legal process had been straightforward since Daniel was consenting, but the emotional weight of it was profound. "Do you, Evelyn Marie Cross, accept the responsibilities and privileges of parenthood for Lillian Moore?" the judge asked. "I do," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "With my whole heart, I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I declare this adoption legal and binding. Congratulations to all of you." Lily launched herself at Evelyn, wrapping her arms around her waist. "You're my mom now, my real mom." "I've been your real mom for a while, sweetheart. This just makes it official." They signed papers and took photos and celebrated with ice cream, still Lily's preferred method of marking important occasions. And that night, when Lily was tucked into bed in the home they all now shared, Evelyn's apartment having been sold months ago, Daniel found his fiancée standing in Lily's doorway, watching their daughter sleep. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "I'm thinking about how different my life is from what I imagined. I thought success meant being untouchable, invulnerable, alone at the top. I thought needing people was weakness. I thought love was a distraction from what really mattered." She leaned against him. "I was wrong about everything. What matters now? This. Sunday morning pancakes and homework help and fire drills that we all survived together. Being noticed when I'm missing. Having people who show up not because I pay them or because I'm useful, but just because they want to be around me. Being part of something messy and imperfect and real." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing remarkably well at all of it. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do." They stood together in the doorway, watching Lily sleep, and Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here, about a fire drill and a broken ankle and a decision to trust his instinct. about coffee meetings and Sunday mornings and learning to be vulnerable, about choosing to build a family from broken pieces and discovering that the cracks were where the light got in. Evelyn wasn't the cold, untouchable CEO anymore. She was a mother learning to braid hair and pack school lunches and attend parent-teacher conferences. She was a partner learning to share burdens and accept help and trust that love didn't require perfection. She was a woman learning that being found was better than never needing rescue. And Daniel, he'd learned that the safe, small life he'd built wasn't actually safe at all. It was just lonely. Real safety came from connection, from being brave enough to let people in, from trusting that the risk of loving was worth the potential for loss. 3 months later, they got married in a small ceremony in Daniel's, their apartment, surrounded by Lily's drawings and photos of Sarah and the life they'd built together. Lily was the flower girl and the ring bearer and the most enthusiastic wedding guest, declaring it the best day ever with the absolute certainty of childhood. Evelyn wore a simple white dress and smiled without reservation. Daniel wore his best suit and couldn't stop grinning. And when they said their vows, promising to notice when the other was missing, promising to show up even when it was hard, promising to be family in all the ways that mattered, Lily stood between them holding both their hands. "I now pronounce you married," their friend who'd gotten ordained online for the occasion announced. "You may kiss your bride." They did, while Lily made exaggerated gagging noises and their small group of friends and coworkers cheered. Later, after the celebration wound down and Lily was asleep in her room, Daniel and Evelyn stood on the balcony looking out at Boston's lights. "Do you ever think about that day?" Evelyn asked, "when you found me in the hallway?" "All the time. It changed everything. I was so angry at myself for going back for those files, for being trapped, for being vulnerable, for needing rescue. I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened. And now I think it was the best thing. Because it taught me that being vulnerable isn't the same as being weak, that needing help doesn't mean you're broken, that sometimes the people who find you when you're lost become the people you can't imagine living without." Daniel pulled her close. "I found you in an empty hallway, and you gave me back a life worth living. I'd say we're even. We're more than even. We're family." And standing there under the stars with the woman he loved and the daughter they both cherished sleeping safely nearby, Daniel understood that some rescues went both ways. He'd saved Evelyn from that hallway, but she'd saved him from a life of careful distance and protective isolation. They'd found each other in the empty spaces, in the moments of fear and vulnerability, in the courage to be seen, and they'd built something neither of them had thought possible, a family chosen not by blood or circumstance, but by the daily decision to keep showing up, keep noticing, keep loving each other through all the imperfect, messy, beautiful moments that made up a life. The fire alarms would sound again. There would be more moments of fear, more challenges to face, more times when one of them felt lost or alone or overwhelmed. But they would face it together, 3 people who'd learned that being found was worth the risk of being vulnerable, that family was something you built one brave choice at a time, and that love, real love, meant noticing when someone was missing and refusing to leave them behind. In the end, Evelyn Cross had been wrong about almost everything. Success wasn't about being untouchable. Strength wasn't about needing no one. And the most important achievement of her life wasn't the company she'd built or the wealth she'd accumulated. It was learning to let herself be found. It was becoming the person who noticed when others were missing. It was this: standing on a balcony with the man she loved, listening to the peaceful breathing of the daughter she'd chosen and who'd chosen her back, understanding finally that she wasn't alone in an empty building waiting for rescue. She was home,